61. Battlefield changes Western Grass Country. In a forest near the Land of Earth, 4 Iwagakure shinobi moved cautiously through the trees. Although the Iwa forces hadn't suffered crippling losses against Konoha, the High Command had ordered a consolidation and a gradual withdrawal westward, trying to draw Konoha deeper into the Land of Earth. The strategy was defensive: preserve strength and use the homeland's terrain to their advantage. "I don't get what the higher-ups are thinking," one Iwagakure chuunin grumbled, glancing around the quiet woods. "We're strong and well-equipped. Why keep retreating from Konoha?" Since the war began, Iwagakure had only shown a fraction of its real power. In his view, with the mist attacking Konoha at home, sending 5,000 or even 10,000 troops should have crushed Konoha amid the chaos. Yet the commanders remained deliberately conservative. "Maybe they want to lure the enemy into the Land of Earth and use the terrain to wipe them out," a stouter shinobi replied. He too was frustrated. If Iwagakure held the strength to counterattack, constant retreat felt like wasting an opportunity. "Enough," Tsumaji cut in. He sounded calm but firm. "The higher-ups have their reasons. We just follow orders." Tsumaji was different from the others, a special jonin and their squad leader. Among friends there could be jokes, but on the battlefield rank still mattered. Wind hissed through the trees. Suddenly kunai sliced the air, dozens of them streaking at the squad from multiple directions. The 4 Iwagakure ninja hadn't noticed an enemy close by. Tsumaji cursed inwardly. They had been patrolling carefully. Had the Konoha attackers used some subtle ninjutsu to hide nearby? There was no time for speculation. Tsumaji pumped chakra into his limbs and tried to dodge. The assault came too fast to form seals and cast formal defenses. The 3 chuunin tried to evade, but the volley was overwhelming. Kunai pierced flesh and clothing. Soon they lay on the ground, incapacitated. "My only option is retreat," Tsumaji muttered through pain. He'd taken wounds in the ambush and wasn't in a position to go all out after the attackers. The enemy had the numbers and the initiative. Staying would be suicide. "Earth release. Fissured earth palm." Tsumaji slammed his hands to the forest floor. The earth cracked apart, chunks of rock and soil launching toward the attackers as a dust cloud filled the air. Using the confusion, Tsumaji activated body flicker technique and fled, determined to bring back word of the Konoha presence. What he didn't notice was that the Konoha ninjas who'd ambushed them only pursued a short distance, then halted and watched him disappear. When Tsumaji was out of sight, the Konoha warriors merged into the ground one by one and vanished into the forest. Similar small-scale ambushes had been reported across the grass country, northern and southern sectors alike. In the south, it was sometimes Iwagakure men ambushing Konoha. The constant hit-and-run operations had both sides uneasy, fearing these skirmishes might prelude to a larger conflict. These Konoha rafters are being cunning, attacking right at the border but not venturing into the Land of Earth. Reshi slammed his fist on the desk in his tent. As captain of Iwagakure's demolition squad and one of the village's senior field commanders, he was angry and frustrated. Bad news from the front kept piling up, and he felt powerless. Still, the High Command's order was clear. Defend, feign weakness, lure the enemy in. "Let's raise it with headquarters," Iwakura suggested. Reshi had been thinking the same. Either retreat entirely into the Land of Earth and follow the ordered strategy through, accepting some loss of face but preserving their forces, or engage the Konoha units aggressively and risk a decisive battle. Both seemed preferable to stalling at the border with nothing but skirmishes. "Hold back the demolition squad for now," Reshi added finally. He had delegated day-to-day authority to Iwakura, but he didn't want to send his elite units, trained and heavily resourced, to get picked off by assassination teams. Losing demolition squad elites would hurt far more than the ordinary casualties. Farther afield, Jiraiya had only just returned from the Land of Rain when the new reports reached him. He frowned at the battlefield intelligence. "If I didn't see their headbands, I'd have thought we were up against hidden mist," he muttered. The ambushes were more sophisticated than expected. Iwagakure had always been strong in large-scale legion combat. Jiraiya still remembered almost dying to them in the Second Shinobi World War, but this assassination-style burrowing and ambush capability was unfamiliar. Maybe Iwakure sent reinforcements. Minato Namikaze suggested after a moment. Or they've commissioned a unit specialized in Earth release ambush tactics during the truce. Jiraiya nodded thoughtfully. Earth release lends itself to ambush, burrowing, creating pits, surprising the enemy. If Awagakure had trained units like that, harassment could escalate into a major offensive. In that case, we need to prepare for a large-scale attack, Jiraiya said, setting the intelligence aside. He contacted Konoha's high command to report and requested deployment of sensory squads. If Awagakure planned a major push, Konoha needed advance warning. I'll join the patrols, Minato volunteered. With Flying Thunder God technique and strong sensory prowess, he could respond rapidly and locate ambushes. Even if he couldn't save every attacked unit, he could likely strike back and avenge them. Good, I'll leave it to you, Minato, Jiraiya replied, trusting him to handle the harassment problem. Morning, Konoha village. Shisui woke and prepared breakfast for himself and Zoroark. After evolving, Zoroark had grown substantially. Shisui worried the fox wouldn't eat enough, so he made Zoroark a larger meal. After breakfast, they headed to Obito's place to invite him to the south border forest for training. Before they arrived, Zoroark cast a genjutsu to appear as his unevolved form, Zorua. Obito and Charizard didn't notice. Hey, old Charizard, give me a lift? I'm too lazy to walk after a big breakfast, Zoroark joked in a tiny, childlike voice. Your wings are cool. Must be awesome to fly. Charizard puffed up at the compliment, and chest-proud, gestured at his back for Zoroark to hop on. Zoroark leapt lightly, landing on Charizard's back. Immediately, Charizard's wings faltered. The little fox felt unexpectedly heavy. How could Zorua be so weighty? The dragon strained, struggling a bit on takeoff. Roar, Charizard grumbled, as if to say the fox needed to slim down. He'd carried Zorua before, and it had felt easy. This was different. Zoroark must have gained several times his previous weight, yet he didn't look bulky. Charizard was puzzled, but curious. Damn it, you're my beast! Obito watched them go with envy. He'd long wanted to ride Charizard himself, but Charizard always refused, claiming he wasn't a mount. Obito suspected the dragon might soar too high and drop him as a prank. Catching him mid-fall might be survivable, but not pleasant. Shisui, you spoil Zorua too much. Use a genjutsu to make him train more, Obito said later in the south border forest, trying to needle Shisui and provoke Zoroark. I'd rather not, Shisui replied mildly, pity in his eyes. If Obito started corrupting Shisui, Zoroark would only misbehave more. Zoroark was not gracious. Obito's suggestion would make him trickier than ever. Don't be evil, Obito. You're corrupting the good-hearted Shisui. Want a beating? Zoroark couldn't help getting worked up at the idea. Bring it on, Obito shrugged. He wasn't worried. Zorua's genjutsu rarely affected him, and aside from illusions, the fox wasn't particularly dangerous. Obito's casual tone made Zoroark more suspicious. Did he truly have that confidence against the fox? Obito quietly activated his 3 Tomoe Sharingan, just in case, an extra precaution. Kakashi, who had just arrived, heard the banter and watched thoughtfully. He'd brought his cane, hoping to catch something humorous to tease Obito with, but Zoroark's first move was unexpectedly decisive. Using a potent genjutsu combined with swift movement, he had Obito pinned flat on the ground in under a minute. No dramatic photo op for Kakashi. Obito stared up in bewilderment. Huh? No, how? He muttered. The fox's strength was abnormal. If this was unevolved Zorua-level power, the evolved Zoroark would be terrifying. Stop teasing, Obito, Shisui said, and Zoroark released the genjutsu, revealing his evolved form. Kakashi was not surprised. Genjutsu and a bold, direct confrontation meant the fox had evolved. He made a mental note that the morning had produced no embarrassing shots to blackmail Obito with. Zoroark had been too effective for that. End of chapter. 562. Reform. All the seniors are so strong, and their 9 beasts are strong too, Yamato exclaimed. The more time he spent with Kakashi and the others, the more Danzo Shimura's words about his exceptional talent felt hollow. Danzo had boasted that Yamato would grow to be Konoha's strongest, and that the village's future depended on him. But Yamato didn't feel any more outstanding than the others. His supposed unique wood release wasn't unique at all. After Mu Yue taught him wood release, cutting sprigs and flying leaf quick blade, Yamato discovered Mu Yue used wood release too. He was stunned. Danzo had hyped wood release so much that Yamato had believed he alone in the ninja world possessed it. Because of Danzo's warnings, Yamato had practiced wood release only in private or with Mu Yue, never in front of Kakashi and the others. Mu Yue's demonstration put him at ease. If anyone deserved to be called Konoha's future, Mu Yue seemed more fitting than he was. That doesn't count. You used genjutsu on me before the fight. That's against the rules, Obito said, brushing dust from his clothes and offering a plausible excuse. It wasn't just an excuse, it was the truth. Zoroark's genjutsu, disguising itself as a Zorua, had lulled him into carelessness and led to his quick defeat. Had he seen the evolved Zoroark, he wouldn't have underestimated it. He would have treated it with full seriousness. Other than Fire Dragon's first evolution, the remaining Pokemon evolutions had shown astonishing improvements. That's something Obito would say, Zoroark replied without surprise. But you make a fair point. Let's fight again. Zoroark was confident in its strength. It might not be absolute top tier among all disciple Pokemon, but it was lethal against human ninja. Its powerful genjutsu created openings effortlessly, and its incredible speed turned opportunities into wins. I still need to cultivate Blue Flame, and I don't have time to keep training with you. We'll talk later, Obito said, implying he was busy. The enemy was hidden. He was exposed. He didn't want to lose face, so he planned to gather information on Zoroark and think of a way to get revenge. You should cultivate more fire release too, Shisui told Zoroark. One bout was enough. 2 would be excessive. Zoroark nodded. It had spoken casually and had no real intention of keeping up the fights with Obito. Kakashi and the others then spent a peaceful week of training. Each disciple focused on their own regimen. Yamato, Kakashi, Shisui, and Obito learned the new ninjutsu Mu Yue taught. Rin Nohara, having recognized weaknesses during the martial arts tournament trip, worked hard to improve her resistance to poison. Metkai, once fully healed, immediately pushed himself back into high-intensity training. His path was simple: build the body stronger. The stronger he became, the more gates of 8 gates he could open with less risk, and the rock-breathing chakra mode would put less strain on him. Night, Uchiha Clan. Before leaving for the meeting, Shisui reviewed his speech for the clan assembly. Reforming the police force was a serious matter, and he had prepared a written draft and memorized it. A quick review was only to check his recall. Once satisfied, he found Obito, and the two of them went to Nanga Shrine. To make the reform succeed on the first try, he needed Obito's support. Obito didn't have many friends in the clan, but his strength and second-place finish in the martial arts tournament had made him a well-known Uchiha prodigy. Obito's presence would lend weight to Shisui's proposal. They arrived at a time when the hall was filling but not yet full. About half the clan members had taken their seats. Shisui led Obito to sit in the upper rows near Uchiha Fugaku. Seating at Uchiha meetings followed strict rules. The head of the clan had the best seat, the elders and respected jonin sat closest, and the young genin were relegated to the outer corners. No one protested when Shisui and Obito took their places. They were entitled to sit where they did. And more so than ordinary jonin. 2 elder jonin were already seated in the upper positions, familiar faces to Shisui. You're truly promising young men. You displayed the Uchiha's prestige at the Youth Martial Arts Tournament. Uchiha Kekchu greeted them with a smile. In Uchiha thinking, anything less than first place was unacceptable, but given Nagato's fame as the victor, second place was tolerable. The fact that Obito and Shisui had placed higher than many other Konoha nin indicated the strength of Uchiha bloodline. Even Uchiha Shengqing, who had earlier clashed with Shisui, spoke approvingly in a measured tone. Despite differences in philosophy, clan members still praised the younger generation for bringing honor to the family. Shisui smiled in response. Obito smiled along. To help Obito relax that evening, Shisui had chatted with him before they arrived. Without having to fight, Obito only needed to stand by Shisui during key moments. Otherwise, he could keep to himself and answer or ignore others as he liked. As more clan members filed in, Fugaku cleared his throat twice. Since everyone is here, today's clan meeting officially begins. Let us discuss the topic of changing the clan to become stronger and more prosperous. Immediately, the discussion opened. It ultimately comes down to producing a Hokage, doesn't it? One Uchiha said. Expand the authority of the police force, another suggested, expressing dissatisfaction with the force's current power. Several voices chimed in. After a moment of listening, Shisui spoke up decisively. I believe the police force should be reformed to attract non-Uchiha ninja. Silence fell like a hand over the hall. The lively chatter stopped as many in the room stared at Shisui in shock and disbelief. He had proposed recruiting outsiders to the police force before, back when he was still inexperienced. Uchiha Fugaku had even brought the young Shisui to a clan meeting once, but the last attempt had ended badly. Shisui had been denounced and driven from Nanga Shrine on the grounds that outsiders could not attend clan meetings. Elder Shengqing's chest tightened with vindication. He had feared Shisui's rise might threaten his authority, and now Shisui had exposed himself to attack. Shisui, what are you saying? Isn't this inviting trouble? Shengqing snapped. If outsiders join our police force, won't we lose the one important Konoha authority we control? Besides, the police force's exclusivity to the Uchiha was set by the second Hokage, not by us. Those words were enough. More would make him appear to be punishing a promising talent. Many Uchiha served in the police force, so Shisui's idea threatened vested interests. Predictably, the room filled with objections. How can you say that? Everyone in the police force are brothers. If outsiders come in, how can they be one of us? You're talented in cultivation, Shisui, but that doesn't mean you're suited for clan governance. Stick to your training. Elder Shengqing is right. The second Hokage set this precedent. Even the Senju accept our abilities. Why risk losing it? Some young clan members who admired Shisui stayed silent. Many had relatives in the police force or were members themselves. In their eyes, Shisui's proposal seemed self-defeating and harmful to people they cared about. Uchiha Kekyu shook his head. He remembered once asking Shisui whether Uchiha exclusivity in the police force was truly a good thing. If he had known Shisui would openly propose this reform at a clan meeting, he would have tried to dissuade him. Shisui listened to each rebuttal with surprising calm. He was no longer the naive child who had been thrown out years ago. He had become a jonin respected for his strength, strong enough to stand against all but Fugaku and Obito. He had both the reasoning and the status to force people to listen. He raised his hands slightly. Everyone, please calm down. Give me time to explain. Fugaku's voice followed, measured and authoritative. Everyone, please be quiet. He would not openly endorse Shisui in front of the clan, but he could not deny deference to a clan prodigy. The hall quieted again. First, this will not harm Uchiha interests, as some of you fear, Shisui began. The reform would involve accepting outsiders, but it will not change current posts. We will apply to the third Hokage to create additional positions to strengthen the police force and expand its influence. Shisui envisioned a police force where Uchiha would not exceed 1/5 of the ranks eventually, but he was pragmatic. The initial steps should be small. He emphasized that no existing Uchiha posts would be removed. The proposal was about expanding the force's capacity. New recruits wouldn't be given high posts at the start. The effect would be more manpower and more operational capacity without displacing current members. As Shisui laid out the plan, the hard expressions around the hall softened. Adding new positions and recruiting outsiders without cutting Uchiha roles could genuinely strengthen the police force. Sensing this, Shisui continued on, ready to make his case. Chapter 563, Monthly Vote Request. First, I'm asking for your monthly votes. Now a quick report on last month's updates. I updated for 29 days and took 2 days off, with a total output of about 180,000 words. If you take away the 18,000 words of extras, the main story was only 162,000 words. Excluding the 2 days off, the average daily word count for the main text was about 500 words. If you include the extras, it comes to roughly 6,200 words per day. Extras can't really be counted as regular updates, so last month's update total wasn't ideal. Xiaoju apologizes for that. I originally planned for at least a 6,000-word daily average, but I didn't expect that even without counting the days off, the main text would only be around 500 per day. There were a lot of reasons. Long-term late nights left me in poor condition, and the plot hit a snag for a while, which led to writer's block. May has passed, so I won't make excuses. It's just the reality that happened. A few other things I haven't really talked about. Xiaoju's book currently has the highest average subscriptions among all serialized Hokage novels at 15,500. For a book that didn't even make it to Sanjiang, reaching this level is really difficult, and I'm tremendously grateful for everyone's ongoing support. When this book first launched, I honestly thought it had flopped. My previous college work made Sanjiang, but this one, written after graduation, didn't, and that discouraged me for a time. Now I still want to push further, to aim for 20,000 average subscriptions. For fanfiction, 20,000 is almost the peak. Among Hokage fanfics, I only know of 2 that have reached it. We're only 4,500 away from that mark. This might be my only chance in life to get a Hokage novel to 20,000 average subscriptions, and if I ever wrote another one, I wouldn't bet on repeating this. So I'm asking my brothers for help. Please cast your monthly votes and help boost exposure by pushing up the monthly ranking. Finally, about updates. Since I want to aim for results, I need to show my commitment. In June, Xiaoju will maintain perfect attendance, no days off unless something major and unforeseen happens. In terms of output, I plan for 7 updates and will strive for 8, with a baseline average of 7,000 words per day and a push toward 8,000 words or more. I won't brag about 10,000 words per day if I can't actually achieve it. I also want to fix my sleep schedule. A good routine helps creativity, and I hope my brothers keep healthy schedules too. One more time, please give your monthly votes. 564. Uchiha with abundant martial virtue. The reform of the police force will absolutely help the development of the Uchiha clan, Shisui went on. The police force controls crucial authority in Konoha, yet it's entirely monopolized by the Uchiha. That monopoly inevitably breeds suspicion and distrust from the other clans and ordinary ninja. The more Shisui analyzed the Uchiha's situation, the more he appreciated the depth of second Hokage Tobirama Senju's strategy. Tobirama had understood the Uchiha thoroughly. His plans were subtle and far-reaching. If Shisui were handling a rival clan, he never would have created a police force that gave the Uchiha a separate department. On the surface, the special status seemed like recognition for the Uchiha's role in founding the village. In truth, Tobirama had used the police force to isolate the Uchiha from the rest of Konoha. The special status demanded a large number of Uchiha join the police force. If they failed in their duties, the Hokage could legitimately punish the clan. With more Uchiha serving in the force, their contact with other shinobi dwindled, and combined with resentment over their monopoly, the clan grew inward-looking. Worse, the police force appeared to wield broad authority, arrest powers, rule-making, but much of that authority was actually controlled by the Anbu. The police force could hardly interfere with Anbu affairs, while Anbu could interfere with the police force and even demand cooperation. And regulations? Who would pass a regulation the Hokage opposed without it being considered rebellion? In Shisui's eyes, the police force had become a cage for the Uchiha. Today, he intended to help them break out. What Shisui says has a point, Uchiha Keiichi thought after a moment. Letting a few outsiders join wouldn't necessarily diminish Uchiha influence and could even be beneficial. Still, Keiichi didn't publicly back Shisui. A closer look made Shisui's argument sound idealistic. Once outsiders were allowed in, would the Hokage really let the Uchiha keep the major powers of the police force? It's not like anyone's losing their positions. This could even expand the police force. What's wrong with that? Uchiha Inaho spoke up in support. He and Shisui weren't close, but Inaho trusted his judgment. He didn't think Shisui would act against clan interests. Think about it. The Hokage needs supporters too. If this proposal improves the other clan's impression of us, it's worth considering. Most Uchiha didn't care what outsiders thought, but even they knew how important political backing was. I think Shisui's arguments make sense, Obito said, breaking his lingering daydreams after Shisui poked him. Entering Nanga Shrine together wasn't enough. Obito's clear support would mark them as an aligned pair in the clan's eyes. Then, as if slipping back into his own world, Obito added, "What should I have for breakfast tomorrow? How should I greet Rin?" Obito's stray remark didn't matter. The clan meeting had learned one thing. The 2 strongest geniuses among the Uchiha had united. That alone shifted the tone of the discussion. Few really knew Obito. He had few Uchiha friends, had only attended a single meeting, and had even sparred verbally with the clan before. But they knew he was powerful and had ranked second in the martial arts tournament. Within the Uchiha, strength demanded respect. Young clan members who had been undecided began to back Shisui. "He's really going to do it," Uchiha Fugaku said, surprised at how many supported Shisui. "I reiterate, the police force belongs to the Uchiha because of the second Hokage's design. If anyone suspects us because of that, it only shows they're jealous and incompetent. Why is the police force ours? Because we're capable, because we're strong." Elder Shengqing immediately countered. He would never agree to reform. Handing the police force over, even partially, would hand initiative back to the Hokage. If the third Hokage wanted to act against the Uchiha, they could always point to Tobarama's arrangement. Once reformed, the police force might never return to Uchiha monopoly. Shengqing's fiery words swelled the pride of many present. Aside from being Konoha's strongest clan, the Uchiha alone felt qualified to hold such a department. It could start with the ordinary positions, Shengqing warned Shisui. "Who can guarantee the third Hokage won't use this to take back our privileges and even appoint outsiders as captains?" The meeting swung back toward Shengqing. Many adults in their 20s and 30s voiced agreement with him. Shisui's face stayed calm, but his mind raced. Whether captains would be taken wasn't the point. He saw the police force as a cage. He needed to persuade the clan without making them feel their interests were threatened. He had to show that reform wasn't necessarily bad for the Uchiha. "Elder Shengqing," Shisui said after a pause, "you said the police force is ours because we're capable. Do you honestly think so many excellent Uchiha would lose to a few outsiders?" The Uchiha were proud and confident in their abilities. As Shisui predicted, that question silenced many. To reject Shisui's proposal outright would be to admit fear of competing. "If it's a fair comparison, of course Uchiha are better suited for those posts," Shengqing retorted. "But the Hokage won't necessarily play fair." Shengqing's appeal to grievance against Konoha gained traction. Some Uchiha denounced the village and the Hokage. Shisui, however, kept dismantling Shengqing's arguments point by point. He wasn't alone. Many younger ninja continued to support him, debating supporters of Shengqing. Shisui felt the discussion spinning out. If it continued, the meeting might be adjourned without resolution. He calmed his breathing and activated his 3 Tomoe Sharingan. Chakra pulsed from him in a quiet, powerful wave. "Elder Shengqing," he said, fixing his blood-red gaze on the elder, "if words aren't working, let's decide it with strength. All ninja who support Elder Shengqing may join the fight. If you can defeat Obito and me, the reform proposal is dropped. If you lose, the reform passes. Do you accept?" Shengqing's eyes narrowed. A clan meeting settling matters by combat seemed extreme, but this was the Uchiha. Their history and temper made such things almost part of their nature. Shisui wasn't acting out of petty rebellion. He was showing confidence in his abilities and had backing from many of the younger generation. The fight was a result of fruitless debate, not an attempt to force ideas by brute force. "As your elder, I must teach you humility," Shengqing said at last. "You are a genius, yes, but you are outnumbered." His strength wasn't that far behind Shisui's, and with 7 Uchiha Jonin and several skilled chuunin backing him, the odds looked even. "Inaho, we should fight for you," said Inaho, eyes bright. Many of the young openly offered to join Shisui. Shisui declined subtly, first because Shengqing had already accepted, and second because he was confident he could handle the opposing faction. He had prepared well. He and Obito, plus their ninja beasts, made up 4 elite jonin. That might not be enough to defeat every Uchiha, but it was more than enough to face Shengqing and his group. They moved the fight away from Nanga Shrine to an open space nearby. Those not participating gathered to watch. Clan head Fugaku led them. Perhaps Fugaku thought this was the best possible outcome. Those Shisui had persuaded might not always follow him, but if Shisui could defeat the opposing Uchiha and force their submission now, long-term resistance would be unlikely. End of chapter. 565. Blue Flame Suppresses. In the clearing, Shisui and Obito stood side by side, facing 15 Uchiha Shinobi, led by Uchiha Shengqing. More Uchiha opposed Shisui than those 15, but Shang-Ching wanted to save face. He couldn't very well drag every dissatisfied clan member into one confrontation. Still, he selected 14 of the clan's elites to accompany him. Including himself, the 15 consisted of 8 jonin and 7 veteran chuunin, a formidable force. Shang-Ching didn't expect to be incapable of handling Shisui. "Shisui, you'll have to treat me to breakfast tomorrow, right?" Obito asked casually, unbothered by the numbers against them. Even outnumbered, he showed no panic. After all, their opponents were just a collection of shinobi without great titles. "I'll treat you for a year," Shisui shot back before Obito could press the joke. If his police reform went smoothly, he'd happily buy Obito breakfast for 10 years. One of the jonin bristled at their calm. "This is ridiculous. A genius alone against so many of us. He must think he's untouchable." "Don't underestimate them. Go all out." Shang-Ching's warning was brisk. He didn't expect Shisui and Obito to easily best 8 jonin, but it would be humiliating to slip up now. Better to be thorough. "Battle start," Uchiha Yashiro called, acting as referee. Uchiha Fugaku, standing nearby, watched intently. He knew Shisui wouldn't challenge them unless he was confident. He, too, was curious what made Shisui so sure. Both Shisui and Obito performed the summoning technique at once. Charizard and Zoroark roared into being, both large and thus not brought to the clan meeting earlier. "These are the enemies we face," Zoroark noted, sweeping its gaze over the 15 Uchiha. It lived with Shisui and understood his plan. It was ready. Charizard, in battle mode, wasted no time. It beat its wings and took to the sky. Did they contract strong 9 beasts? Fugaku wondered. Powerful summon beasts were rare and valuable. Shang-Ching and several others formed hand signs. Fire release, great fireball technique. Massive fireballs were hurled towards Shisui, Obito, and Zoroark. Those who didn't use ninjutsu readied tools to block and counter. Charizard, high above, wasn't an immediate target. Attacking a flying beast was harder than striking those on the ground. The Uchiha tacitly decided to deal with Shisui and Obito first. Shisui condensed chakra and winked at Zoroark. Zoroark understood. It unleashed chakra and activated a genjutsu. Flames poured from its mouth and coalesced into a seething sea of fire intended to swallow the incoming attacks. What kind of summon can release fire release like that? Shang-Ching's pupils narrowed. A summons capable of elemental jutsu carried great significance. He also wondered, privately, whether the chakra cost would be sustainable. The stronger the summon, the more chakra summoned and sustained it required. As the incoming fireballs converged, things grew stranger. Same-natured ninjutsu should cancel each other out, yet the giant fire dragons that formed from Zoroark's sea of fire ignored that rule. They pierced through the Uchiha's fireballs and rushed straight for Shang-Ching's group. "What fire release is this?" Shang-Ching cursed, feeling decades of experience inadequate. He flared chakra and used body flicker to evade as the dragons bore down. The Uchiha awkwardly dodged Zoroark's attack. With the field clear of interference, Shisui and Obito moved. Shisui's body flicker brought him forward. With a single punch each, he sent 2 chuunin flying. Even among Mu Yue's disciples, Shisui's taijutsu ranked near the top. Only Yamato and a few others measured up, and even Nagato, though not the best, was superior to ordinary peers. Shisui, however, was excellent in raw close combat. Charizard, from above, released wind-release air blades, and Obito focused, adding his power to combine with Charizard's attacks to take down 3 Uchiha ninja. One chuunin, who'd been caught in the flames, suddenly found he wasn't hurt at all. Shang-Ching's expression changed. He concentrated chakra into his eyes and activated the Sharingan. Once the crimson pattern appeared, he checked his own chakra and then stared at Zoroark with wary eyes. It had been genjutsu all along. Zoroark had cast a massive genjutsu across the clearing, powerful, wide, and without warning. Large-scale genjutsu can be devastating precisely because it's subtle. Without suffering real harm, it's hard to realize you're under its influence. Fortunately for Shang-Ching, several chuunin had tested the waters and let the side detect the illusion. Shang-Ching called out, and the other open-eyed Uchiha activated their Sharingan, dispelling the genjutsu one by one. Because the Sharingan consumes chakra, no one uses it at the outset of a battle unless needed, and many had been caught off guard. Thanks to the early detections, Shang-Ching's side ultimately lost 6 chuunin and 1 jonin. 7 jonin-level fighters remained. Yashiro, watching, was surprised. He hadn't noticed either. The Uchiha, who'd been under the illusion, all gasped, bewildered at how and when they'd fallen into it. Seeing the genjutsu broken, Shisui concentrated his flame breathing to its limit and entered flame-breathing chakra mode. His aura swelled. He could have used Zoroark and Scheherazade to press the advantage, but he wanted this victory personally. This should be his and Obito's fight, not a contest for their summons. Obito followed without hesitation and entered flame-breathing chakra mode as well. Zoroark and Scheherazade took the responsibility of holding off 3 Jonin and a chuunin. Fire release. Great Dragon Fire Technique. Shang-Qing formed a single tiger hand sign and exhaled a huge orange-yellow fire dragon, one of his strongest techniques. Shisui moved faster. In flame-breathing chakra mode, he could release fire without forming hand signs. Fire release. Great Dragon Fire Technique. Shisui clapped his hands, and a crimson dragon even larger surged forward. The 2 beasts collided. Scorching heat splashed across the clearing, and the earth turned to blackened soil. Shang-Qing watched cold sweat run down his forehead as his dragon head was devoured. In a clash of same-natured ninjutsu, the weaker party simply loses. No excuses. How can this be? How much has he improved? Shang-Qing's heart panicked. In their last guidance match, their fire release had been equal. Now, Shisui's clearly overpowered him. For the first time, he felt something like the presence of Uchiha Madara in Shisui, not in personality, but in sheer, invincible power. Another Jonin freed himself and used his own great fireball to help blunt the residual force of the dragons. Shang-Qing barked an order. You and I will take Shisui first. He'd been beaten by Shisui before and could chalk that up to being underestimated. Lose again now, it would be inexcusable. 15 against 2 with 8 Jonin on their side. No close combat. Use ninjutsu, Shang-Qing warned. He knew Shisui's taijutsu was dangerous and that Shisui probably had a secret that complemented it. Keeping their distance and draining his chakra with long-range attacks was the smart play. They formed hand signs in sync and unleashed Great Dragon Fire at full force. Shisui ignored the incoming dragon and closed the gap, moving ever closer. When the opposing dragons were mere decimeters away, Shisui released the chakra he'd been storing. His flame-breathing reached its apex. Blue flame! He cried. He opened his mouth and exhaled a stream of blue fire, the thickness of an arm. Compared to the massive orange-yellow dragons, it looked small, almost insignificant. Yet when the blue flame met the 2 dragons, the result was explosive. The dragons flashed blue and were swallowed, disappearing as if they'd never existed. Shang-Qing froze, stunned. He almost thought it was another genjutsu, but his body told him otherwise. The blue flame was real. Because they'd been so close and the dragons had failed to counter it, by the time his group tried to dodge the blue flame, it was already inches from them. For Shang-Qing, the moment was dizzying. Memories from his birth, to ninja school, to becoming an elder, years of life seemed to flicker through his mind in an instant. Thankfully, Shisui controlled the blue flame and let it dissipate when it was still 7 centimeters away from them. Shang-Qing staggered back 2 steps, nearly collapsing, panting, sweat soaking his shirt. The others matched his shaken state. Shisui breathed out heavily as well. He'd been practicing blue flame relentlessly for the past week, but his proficiency was still low. He couldn't reproduce Mu Yue's many versions, couldn't compress the flame the way his teacher could. He could only expend most of his chakra in flame-breathing chakra mode to produce a short, high-temperature blue flame. That was why he'd closed the distance. His blue stream wouldn't have reached otherwise. Even unrefined, though, it was the most powerful fire release he knew. It made an enormous difference. Shang-Qing finally steadied himself and asked quietly, "What was that fire release?" Shisui didn't answer. Blue flame was a technique taught by Mu Yue. It wasn't something he would talk about lightly. Shang-Qing closed his Sharingan and sighed. Looking at Shisui, he saw the shadow of Uchiha Madara, not in every way, but in the possibility of unparalleled strength. "If it's you," he said softly, "perhaps you really can lead the Uchiha back to glory." "I'll do my best," Shisui replied. He dared not promise to restore the clan himself, but he would try to make them better than they were. "That's good enough." Shang-Qing forced a small smile, then turned and walked toward Nanga Shrine. There were still Uchiha who hadn't been defeated, but for him, this fight was already decided. 566. Shisui's Life Mission Settlement. After Uchiha Shengqing left, the remaining Uchiha nin were silent. There was no mistaking it, they had lost. Those who had once looked down on Shisui now regarded him and Obito with complicated expressions. They had to admit, Shisui and his team had every right to be arrogant. Shisui and Obito win, Uchiha Yashiro declared, and the surrounding Uchiha all turned to look at the two, surprised, especially by Shisui. In the fight, Scheherazade and Obito had focused on support and containment, so the most impressive displays had been Shisui and Zoroark. Zoroark's hard-to-detect, wide-range genjutsu and Shisui's astonishing blue flames left a lasting impression on everyone present. The gap keeps getting bigger, Uchiha Inaho muttered, scratching his head. Since Shisui first showed his strength, Inaho had been training hard with him as a goal. But with every appearance, Shisui only seemed farther away. Inaho tried not to take it personally. It wasn't the first time the distance had widened, and he'd grown used to using Shisui as motivation rather than expecting to truly catch up. I hope this will bring positive changes, Uchiha Fugaku said, guiding the clan back toward Nanga Shrine. According to the agreement between Shisui and Uchiha Shengqing, Shisui's reform proposal was to be presented at the clan meeting. Unless Fugaku, as clan leader, chose to exercise his prerogative and veto it, the proposal would be put to a vote. Of course, as clan head, Fugaku rarely overruled the majority. Shisui let out a relieved breath. He had prepared thoroughly, but there was still the chance of an unexpected failure. Obito, thank you for your help, he said. Implementing the plan alone would have been far more difficult. It's nothing. Obito waved it off with a grin. You said this was good for the Uchiha. I'm Uchiha too. He didn't have many friends in the clan, but he had been raised by Uchiha traditions. A sense of clan honor remained. Back at Nanga Shrine, the clan meeting resumed. The atmosphere had shifted. Uchiha Shengqing and his supporters kept their promise to stay silent. Shisui explained his reform plan, and his supporters discussed it among themselves. Does anyone have any objections? If not, the police force reform proposal will be passed. Uchiha Fugaku asked after an appropriate interval. Silence filled the shrine. It felt as if the reform had become the clan's common will. No one objected. Then the police force reform proposal is passed. This clan meeting is concluded. Dismissed, Fugaku announced. The shrine broke into quiet chatter as people discussed the reform's implications and drifted away. Obito, you should go ahead. I still have some things to do, Shisui said, seeing Obito look eager to leave. Passing the clan meeting was only half the battle. A reform of an institution as large as the police force required the Hokage's signature and seal. Shisui needed to work with Fugaku to prepare the submission for the Hokage. All right. Obito waved and jogged off. Clan meetings bored him. He was glad to be free. Shisui accompanied Fugaku back to the clan leader's home. Itachi, still awake, brightened when he saw Shisui arrive, but Shisui only exchanged a few words before heading into the study with Fugaku. We must make the third Hokage feel our genuine desire for reform, Shisui told Fugaku. The police force had been a pitfall placed by the second Hokage for the Uchiha, but Shisui's research, aided by Mu Yue's guidance, suggested the second Hokage had not wanted to utterly destroy the clan. If he had intended that, there were much simpler, harsher methods he could have used. Given that, Shisui reasoned, Hiruzen Sarutobi likely had no desire to annihilate the Uchiha either. Hiruzen had shown no signs of wanting to suppress them. In fact, Uchiha like Shisui and Obito had received support and cultivation. The key to getting Hiruzen to agree was sincerity. Make him believe the Uchiha wanted to reform, not just to grab positions and increase Konoha's burdens. Fugaku listened, thoughtfully. He hadn't expected Shisui to consider the Hokage's perspective in such detail. After about an hour of discussion, they parted, and Shisui noticed Itachi still awake outside on the corridor, looking sullen. Itachi, it's bedtime, Shisui said, squatting down with a smile. You need to sleep early to grow. But Shisui-Nisan, you're not sleeping either, Itachi replied, cheeks slightly puffed. I'm a jonin now. You're still a child. Children need to sleep. Shisui ruffled Itachi's head. Itachi was silent for a moment, then spoke with quiet disappointment. You told me last time you'd tell me a story when you had time. We've met several times, and you still haven't told one. Itachi wasn't unreasonable. He wouldn't have been upset if Shisui had never promised, but Shisui had promised, and now seemed to have forgotten. Itachi felt hurt not at missing a story, but at being forgotten. "I'm really sorry, I've been busy," Shisui said awkwardly. He had been consumed by planning the police force reform and had genuinely forgotten. "If you're too busy, I'll tell you next time," Shisui interrupted, tapping Itachi gently on the head. "You'll get your story, but now it's time for bed." Itachi nodded obediently and went to sleep after bidding Shisui good night. Shisui watched him go, the memory from the future flickering in his mind. Clan extermination, something he absolutely could not allow. He would do everything in his power to guide Itachi onto the right path. But if Itachi ever insisted on annihilating his own clan, Shisui warned himself he would show no mercy. Hokage's office. Hiruzen Sarutobi blinked as he read the petition Uchiha Fugaku had submitted. The Uchiha were requesting to relax the rule and allow non-Uchiha shinobi into the police force. It was unprecedented since the force's founding. He studied it carefully, then closed his eyes to think. This could be a big deal. The police force was an important department, but it could also be a small administrative change, simply opening a few positions. Tapping his wooden desk, Hiruzen decided this was not a matter for a high-level council. Still, he wanted to hear directly from Fugaku about his motives, so he summoned an Angbu to bring the clan leader to the office. "Lord Third Hokage." Fugaku bowed as he entered. Hiruzen nodded. The Uchiha were a clan watched closely by Anbu, and Fugaku's character was well known. Not the most outstanding in raw power among Uchiha leaders, but unusually steady for the clan. He might not truly revere Hiruzen, but he would handle his duties with proper decorum. "Tell me about your police force reform. Why propose this, and what impact will it have on the police force in Konoha?" Hiruzen asked. He, too, wanted to resolve the Uchiha-Konoha tensions. Monitoring the Uchiha with Anbu diverted resources. If war intensified and Uchiha were sent to the battlefield, the village would need to assign teams to supervise them. Hardly ideal. "Actually, the idea originated with Shisui," Fugaku said, omitting some details and recounting the core of Shisui's proposal. He had been instructed to present it honestly if questioned. Hiruzen smiled wryly. If Kagami knew his grandson would be like this, he'd be smiling with relief. He knew Uchiha Kagami from his younger days and could see that Shisui was an exceptional version of him, young, but thinking and fighting beyond his years. After clarifying his doubts, Hiruzen allowed Fugaku to return to his duties and had an Anbu fetch Shisui. "You can reach the top 4 of the martial arts tournament, and you can help your clan. If Asuma were half as capable as you, I wouldn't worry so much about him," Hiruzen teased when Shisui arrived, delaying formalities with a chuckle. "You flatter me. Asuma works hard. He made the top 8, which isn't bad," Shisui answered modestly. Hiruzen stroked his beard and shook his head. That top 8 had some luck in it. As Hokage, he had a good feel for relative strengths. If he ranked the top 8 strictly, Asuma might not even make the top 10. Still, he was pleased. Who doesn't like praise for their student? They moved on to the matter at hand. Shisui explained the reform in the same straightforward way he had presented it to Fugaku. After confirming there were no hidden motives and satisfied that the proposal aimed to bridge differences rather than exploit them, Hiruzen approved the request to open positions in the police force to non-Uchiha shinobi. When the reform was approved and the system began to accept non-Uchiha, Mu Yue's panel pinged. Shisui opened his own panel and saw his life mission progress jump substantially. His life mission had advanced significantly. Chapter 567, New S-Level Skills. Name, Uchiha Shisui Life Mission. Uchiha and Konoha main goal. Eliminate the conflict between the Uchiha clan and Konoha so the Uchiha can integrate into Konoha mission. Progress, 30.8%. Shisui's life mission progress was still the lowest among Mu Yue's disciples, but it had improved significantly. When Obito and Metkai broke through 40%, Shisui had been stuck in the teens, a huge gap. Now, although he still lagged behind, the margin had narrowed considerably. Mu Yue checked the mission settlement rewards. This time the progress jump was large enough to trigger 2 reward settlements at once. For disciple Uchiha Shisui, increased strength, higher reputation, and more influence inside the clan, small but meaningful steps toward resolving the Uchiha-Konoha conflict. The first settlement granted chakra plus 1400, a ninjutsu extraction scroll, S mastery level, and the genjutsu dance of the crescent moon, mastery level. The second settlement boosted disciple Uchiha Shisui's rank and helped promote reform of the police force, providing chakra 1500, a yin release skill extraction scroll, S mastery level, and a yin release ninjutsu mastery scroll. The reward tier matched what other disciples got at the same progress, but the specific rewards were tailored to Shisui's needs, exactly why Mu Yue always pushed to help his disciples complete their life missions. Random reward sources could be hit or miss. Life mission rewards were consistently high quality and aligned with each disciple's strengths. Aside from the difficulty of completing the missions, there were no drawbacks. Combined, the two settlements gave 2,900 chakra, roughly the total chakra of a ninja academy teacher, an asset Mu Yue never had enough of. There were also two S-rank extraction scrolls, one generic and one specifically for yin release. The ninjutsu reward, Dance of the Crescent Moon, was an A-rank genjutsu, practical and potent among native ninja world genjutsu. The yin release mastery scroll allowed Mu Yue to allocate ninjutsu points as he wished. After confirming the rewards, Mu Yue went through his usual ritual, washed his hands, and muttered a silent prayer to whatever gods might be listening, before starting the draw. Two S-rank extraction scrolls required the proper ceremony. He opened the general S-rank ninjutsu extraction scroll first, clicked extract, and a large roulette wheel spun into view. The pointer stopped in a blue sector, and a rush of cultivation memories poured into his mind. Ninjutsu extraction scroll S has been consumed, obtaining skill, Ice Age, mastery level. Mu Yue recognized the technique immediately. Ice Age was Aokiji's ultimate move from the One Piece world, a destructive ice release technique capable of freezing an island when used to full power. It was a powerful offensive skill, and the cultivation memories improved Mu Yue's ice release proficiency even further. He'd long known that mastering powerful techniques accelerates chakra nature transformation progress. One thought cut had already boosted his lightning release proficiency, and Ice Age did the same for ice release. He didn't need more raw power so much as variety. Bloodline limit and cross-world skills diversified his arsenal. Then he opened the yin release scroll. Yin release skill extraction scroll. S. Mastery level has been consumed, obtaining skill, Kenbunshoku Haki, mastery level. Another torrent of memories. The localized Kenbunshoku Haki came into his mind almost instantly. Mu Yue's first association was the Kenbunshoku Haki from One Piece, and the system had preserved the core, perception and attack prediction. The main difference in the ninja world was that Kenbunshoku Haki required chakra to activate. He tested it immediately. At mastery level, his Kenbunshoku Haki's sensory range was no smaller than the best sensory ninjutsu he had acquired. Its reach covered all of Konoha, not just the main district, but the Death Forest and training grounds too. Like many sensory techniques, it could sense chakra strength, Jith, the location and number of enemies. But it had an edge ordinary sensory ninjutsu didn't. It could sense attacks in combat, even those coming from out of direct sight. Kenbunshoku Haki, like armament haki, didn't need hand seals and could be maintained as long as he fed it chakra. Mu Yue measured consumption. For routine use it was acceptable, less chakra intensive than an Uchiha keeping their Sharingan active, though maintaining maximum sensory range constantly would be expensive. Still, one of Kenbunshoku Haki's most coveted functions in the One Piece world was its short-range future sight. Mu Yue condensed a large amount of chakra, performed yin-release nature transformation, and pushed the skill to its limit against a shadow clone. Secret technique, Kenbunshoku. He strained to detect even the faintest glimpses of future motion, but he failed. Was it insufficient proficiency or some other limit from localization? He pondered for a moment, decided the ability to actually see forward in time would probably require perfect level mastery, and let it go for now. He could test again later. He planned to teach the skill to Shisui the next day. Kenbunshoku Haki was universal and complementary. Shisui and the other Uchiha already had the Sharingan, excellent at dynamic vision and tracking anything within sight, but attacks from blind spots remained a problem. Kenbunshoku Haki's ability to detect attacks outside one's visual field made it a valuable complement. The current issue for Shisui and the rest was chakra. They needed to allocate it between breathing technique chakra mode, the Sharingan, powerful ninjutsu, and everything else. They were still young and not yet in a rapid growth phase, but that would change. For now, they could learn Kenbun Shoku casually. Their chakra reserves would grow with time. Land of Earth, Iwagakure. Tsuchikage Building, Tsuchikage's office. Konoha sent an assassination squad to attack in the western grass country. Onoki frowned as he read the latest intelligence. The move seemed unusually aggressive, out of step with how Konoha's forces normally operated in the grass country. Could their commander have changed? He wondered. A force's style often reflected its leader. A more aggressive commander would produce a more aggressive approach. But proving a change in command was difficult unless a field battle forced the commander into action or their intelligence had a major coup. Notify the other high-ranking officials. Convene a meeting. Onoki ordered the Anbu at the door. The next strategic choices would affect the posture Iwagakure had maintained since the war began. He wanted the elders and advisors together. When the high-ranking officials assembled, each found a compiled intelligence report at their seat. Thoughts on the grass country request? Onoki asked after giving them time to read. The room stayed quiet. If we send support now, won't all our previous disguises be for nothing? Elder Muka said after a moment. Iwagakure had been playing weak, hiding strength and waiting for the right moment to strike. Openly reinforcing the front would blow that cover. You're being too cautious, a white-haired official countered. Even the weakest of the 5 great shinobi villages could field a few thousand shinobi. Sending reinforcements won't undo all our prior plans. I agree, a burly official added. If we pull back into Earth, we'll lose face and telegraph that we're trying to hide strength. The frontline commander had asked either for large-scale support to go on the offensive or for a recall to lure the enemy deeper. For the council, the choices were subtle. Refuse the request and order him to maintain previous orders or approve reinforcement with carefully chosen numbers and commanders. There was also the conservative option, make no change and continue to observe. With Kumogakure and Tsunegakure's moves still unclear and currents running under the surface of the ninja world, it's safer not to show too much, Elder Muka argued. Muka, you're too conservative. The frontline troops are already unhappy. Morale will drop if this continues, Choki snapped back. Onoki ignored their sparring and looked to Kagami, the Jonin squad leader sitting at the far right, whose quick mind he trusted in these meetings. I think we should send reinforcements, Kagami said after a pause. It will soothe the frontline resentment, and it'll also hide our true strength. So far, Iwagakure has shown too little. If we let the front win a fight now, other villages hostile to Konoha will be encouraged to act. He outlined a plan. Send a moderate force to support the front. Let them fight normally. Win if possible. Don't hold back on purpose. If Konoha reacts by sending large forces to the border, we can then feign weakness and intentionally absorb a controlled defeat later to preserve our vital strength. Konoha's superiority was entrenched. The pattern since the war began had been their advantage. A tactical win now, or a staged sequence of gain and loss, would not damage Iwagakure's standing, but could manipulate Konoha's strategic choices. Onoki nodded. If Iwagakure's forces could beat Konoha's on the front, it would stir appetite for attack in other villages wary of Konoha. 20 minutes later, the council approved sending more troops and initiating hostilities on the front. But details, how many reinforcements, which shinobi would join them, who would lead, still needed careful decision. When the approval reached Reshi, the frontline commander, he laughed aloud. Finally, we can counterattack. I'll show them the might of our Iwagakure explosion force. The humiliation of constant retreats, the anger over assassinated comrades, and the dream of restoring Iwagakure's honor coalesced into a savage joy. For now, do not take offensive action, Reshi ordered his jonin. Once reinforcements arrive, we'll give them something big. He convened his captains to consolidate forces, partly to create the appearance of withdrawal and partly to preserve strength. Konoha's assassination squads were out, and their main forces were also moving strangely. Reshi wanted to make his last defensive preparations before the main engagement. Konoha, Jiraiya, Minato Namikaze, he muttered, clenching his fist. 568. Reinforcements arrived. The battle situation turned around. The southern grass country, bordering the Land of Fire and once renowned for its pleasant environment, this region had been the most developed part of the grass country, at least before the war. Once the fighting began, the south became its hardest-hit area. People fled, caravans avoided the roads, and repeated ninja battles reduced prosperous towns to ruins. It's infuriating. These great nations are waging war on our land, wrecking our economy, and we have to help them too. A patrolling grass ninja spat his resentment as he looked over the abandoned villages. The grass village never enjoyed the prestige of the 5 great shinobi villages. Few outsiders came seeking them out. They relied mostly on their fellow countrymen. But the conflict between Iwagakure and Konoha in grass country had devastated the local economy, and with fewer resources coming in, the grass village had less to work with. The squad leader scanned the area and only relaxed when he didn't see any Konoha shinobi. Their unit was attached to Konoha forces and had to follow Konoha's orders until they returned home. He muttered under his breath, cursing the former village leader. That Yokogawa Tsutomu, all his selfishness got us tangled up with Iwagakure and made us enemies of Konoha. If not for Yokogawa's maneuvering, the grass shinobi might have kept their heads down and lived better. Now, to make up for his mistake, the grass village had become Konoha's ally, forced to help resist Iwagakure. There's nothing we can do about it now, another ninja replied. Between the two, Konoha's the lesser evil. Konoha's stronger, and Mu Yue helped our village before. They settled down to rest. The leader was reluctant to press the issue. Dying for Konoha would bring no guarantees, no pensions for families, so enthusiasm for the mission was low. They sat in quiet irritation until, without warning, the lead man convulsed and fell forward with a black kunai protruding from his chest. He stared ahead, disbelief frozen on his face, before collapsing. Captain, Iwagakure, when did they get here? The remaining grass shinobi, trained soldiers all, were baffled. Their area had clearly been scouted, yet how had the Iwagakure killers slipped in unseen? The squad had been wiped out before it could react. A blonde figure streaked through the trees, a blur of speed and focus. Minato Namikaze followed the dispersing chakra traces and frowned, then pushed himself harder with the body flicker technique. By the time he reached the scene, there were only corpses and no sign of the killers. Half a minute earlier, Minato had been able to sense the assassin's chakra. As he closed, the signatures vanished. This again. Minato's expression darkened. He wasn't a dedicated sensory ninja, but his perceptive skill exceeded many in the sensory corps. If even he couldn't detect this technique, most ordinary sensory squads would miss it entirely. He wondered whether the Hyuga's Byakugan could pierce whatever cloaking ninjutsu was being used. The Byakugan relied on the eye, so chakra erasing techniques might be ineffective. He searched carefully within 10 kilometers, but found nothing. Using Flying Thunder God, Minato returned to camp and reported to Jiraiya. To be able to slip past you, Minato, Iwagakure is serious, Jiraiya said, rubbing his chin. He had suspected for a while that Iwagakure might soon strike hard at Konoha positions in grass country. Now he was near certain. It's not without hope. Of the reinforcements we requested, 3 are from the Hyuga, 2 of them Jonin, Jiraiya told Minato. Given the current battlefield chaos, he had sent sensory teams and some Anbu for intelligence work. In mass clashes, intel made the difference. For a ninja like Minato, knowing the enemy's exact location could let him take out a force of hundreds single-handedly. That night, Minato paused before writing letters to Kushina and to Mu Yue. His note to Kushina was light. Updates on his safety and normal life, no war. He didn't want to burden her while she worked toward becoming a qualified Jinchuriki. His letter to Mu Yue was more candid. Minato admitted that, famous or not, a war could kill anyone, and if the worst happened, he wanted Mu Yue to watch over Kushina. Even Minato, though renowned, did not assume he was invincible. West Grass Country. Reshi grinned as the reinforcement march neared. Lord Reshi, reinforcements have arrived. 809, 7 Jonin, 12 special Jonin. Huoguang reported solemnly. Reshi's smile widened. 800 reinforcements plus my force of 1,200. That's 2,000. Jiraiya, what can you possibly fight me with? He was elated. If Jiraiya still had roughly 1,000 troops, Reshi's numbers gave him the clear advantage. Buoyed by his commander's confidence and orders from above, Reshi even began imagining the consequences of invading the Land of Fire itself. He convened an immediate planning meeting. Numbers alone weren't enough. They would need a strategy. Whatever the reason, released pent-up strength from Iwagakure, effective leadership, or something else, the fighting on the grass country battlefield had swung dramatically. Konoha assassination squads were being neutralized, and Iwagakure intelligence teams repeatedly succeeded in gathering crucial information on Konoha forces. Early morning, Land of Fire. Konoha, South Border Forest. Everyone except Kakashi and Guy, gather. Mu Yue summoned his students. We won't train separately this morning. I'm going to teach you a new secret ninjutsu. Metkai and Kakashi had reasons for missing the session. Guy was focused on yin release and working on armament haki, which suited him better than Kenbunshoku haki. Kakashi's transparent world overlapped in part with the abilities of Kenbunshoku haki, and his chakra reserves were taxed, so it wasn't the right time for him to learn. Shisui, Obito, and the others assembled quickly. Mu Yue introduced the new technique. It's a yin release. Type-wise, it's sensory ninjutsu, but in combat, it's exceptional, functionally similar to Transparent World. So many new techniques lately, Obito brightened. Mu Yue had taught a blue flame fire release, a Shinobi sect technique had introduced a flame vortex, and now this. It basically lets you sense attacks and predict movement. Shisui, attack me with your Sharingan at full power, Mu Yue said, preparing a demonstration. Shisui concentrated chakra in his eyes. Red spread and his three Tomoe Sharingan bloomed. Mu Yue-sensei, I'm coming, he called, then launched himself. To everyone's surprise, Mu Yue closed his eyes. Secret technique, Kenbunshoku haki, he announced. With chakra engaged, Mu Yue's perception sharpened. Shisui struck with a whirlwind kick at extreme speed. Although blindfolded, Mu Yue moved as if he had invisible sight, sidestepping so precisely that Shisui's foot brushed 2 centimeters past his clothing. Air from the kick rustled his robe. Shisui followed immediately with a punch, but Mu Yue merely stepped aside. The blow missed. Kenbunshoku haki lets you perceive attacks even out of sight, Mu Yue explained. In a crowded, chaotic battlefield, that kind of perception kept a ninja alive in ways ordinary vision could not. He opened his eyes and signaled Shisui to continue. Next, you'll throw a left punch, then a whirlwind kick. Mu Yue predicted each strike and moved accordingly. Shisui's attacks came as if choreographed to Mu Yue's words, but everyone knew Shisui wasn't following commands. Mu Yue was simply predicting his moves so quickly that there was no time to react otherwise. This is incredible. It's even more useful than the Sharingan, Obito muttered, rubbing his head. He rarely used genjutsu. The Sharingan's main benefit to him had been enhanced situational awareness. But Kenbunshoku haki could perceive movement like the Sharingan, sense off-screen attacks, and act as a sensory ninjutsu all at once. Suddenly, the famed Sharingan felt less invincible to him. He remembered how, before he awakened it, he'd thought the Sharingan would make him unbeatable. But even at 3 Tomoe, it hadn't put him above his peers. In comparison, the chakra aptitude of the Uzumaki, Kushina, Naruto, Swanhua Ling had impressed him with their bottomless reserves. No wonder Madara couldn't beat Hashirama, Obito thought. Maybe the Sharingan was overrated next to some Senju or other bloodline limits. All of you try to learn it. If you can't, don't force it, Mu Yue warned. This ninjutsu requires sensory talent. Across the ninja world, sensory ability was prized. A unit with good intel was far stronger than one without. The Hyuga clan's natural sensory gift explained much of Konoha's advantage. After the demonstration, Mu Yue began formal instruction. Partway through the lesson, a memory from a shadow clone returned to him. His clone at home had been visited by Anbu. He stopped the class abruptly. You can train freely for now. I'm heading to the Hokage building. He told his students and rushed out. Between that visit and the letter Minato had sent, Mu Yue suspected the situation on the battlefield had taken a turn. 569. Sage fights Jinchuriki, accepts mission in times of crisis. Jiraiya's perception squad had apparently solved the Iwagakure assassination attempt, except that they hadn't exactly cooperated with Minato Namikaze to kill the assassins. The Iwagakure team had simply vanished before they struck and never launched the attack. Jiraiya assumed it was a minor intelligence slip. The assassins must have learned something in advance and aborted. It wasn't how he would have imagined it, but a problem solved was a problem solved, and small-scale harassment wasn't decisive on a battlefield that still needed a major engagement to settle the matter. What came next, however, went far beyond Jiraiya's expectations. Iwagakure's intelligence capabilities proved frighteningly strong. Even with local grass country shinobi helping, Konoha's forces were on the back foot in the intelligence war. Enemy movements went undetected. Konoha maneuvers were repeatedly revealed and foiled. Jiraiya began to suspect moles high in Konoha's intelligence network, even inside Anbu, though that seemed unlikely. People with questionable loyalties rarely rose that far. With setbacks piling up, he had no choice but to switch to defense, shrinking Konoha's operational footprint to minimize losses and prevent Iwagakure from widening their edge. Then, just as Jiraiya prepared to entrench his forces, Iwagakure somehow learned the location of the main Konoha encampment. A tremendous explosion rocked the camp, knocking him and the other commanders over the strategy map. "Lord Jiraiya, this is bad. Iwa's found us." A Konoha jonin stormed into the tent. "Did Iwagakure attack?" Jiraiya frowned. "Where's the perception squad?" He had intended to rely on Konoha's superior sensory ninja to compensate for their intelligence shortcomings. Now Iwagakure was attacking while the perception team hadn't sounded an alarm. "Unclear. The perception squad gave no warning," the jonin replied. Another explosion thundered in the distance. Jiraiya shoved past the jonin, ready to lead a counterattack to extract their forces. He barely had time to move when the jonin's eyes flashed cold, and he lunged, kunai aimed straight at Jiraiya's back. Minato reacted in a heartbeat, unleashing a burst of chakra and kicking the jonin away. Jiraiya stared in disbelief. A Konoha jonin had just tried to stab him. Worse, the attacker was from the Sarutobi clan. How could a spy get that close? "Ninja art, lion's mane hair." Jiraiya barked and counterattacked. He had fought countless battles. Despite the shock, he didn't hesitate to treat the traitor as an enemy. Attacking an on-duty commander was an act of war. If he killed him then and there, no one could blame him. At that moment, several pointed stone projectiles flew in. Explosion release, spat by Iwakura, the vice captain of Iwagakure's explosion corps. Jiraiya instantly changed tactics. He extended his long hair to wrap himself defensively. Minato used the Flying Thunder God technique to teleport just as the stones detonated in a blinding flash. After teleporting, Minato threw several Flying Thunder God kunai at Iwakura, but Iwakura spat out a stone that deflected them and retreated. He knew his limits. Minato's speed made him a poor choice for a direct fight. Before Minato could pursue, an enormous chakra signature flared up. Someone else had arrived. "Minato Namikaze, have you decided how you want to die?" Roshi stepped into view and blocked Minato's path. Minato's face went serious. This was clearly a coordinated ambush. Both captains of Iwagakure's explosion corps and both of Iwagakure's Jinchuriki were present. Summoning technique. Jiraiya slammed his hand to the ground and called the two Mount Myobaku sages. "So many powerful chakra signatures for you to tussle with, little Jiraiya," Fukasaku greeted as he appeared, sensing the Jinchuriki and the heavy hitters from Iwa. "This is terrible timing. I was almost deciding dinner," Shima grumbled. "Honey, this isn't the time." Fukasaku scolded. "Honey, don't underestimate a housewife's woes," Shima shot back. "Stop arguing," Jiraiya said, helpless. He noticed the fallen Sarutobi jonin had inexplicably disappeared. "Quick, stand on my shoulders and enter sage mode. This is dangerous." Jiraiya felt the pressure keenly. He wasn't afraid of punishment for defeat. He feared that if his forces were routed, Iwagakure would march into the land of fire. Fukasaku and Shima understood the stakes and leapt onto Jiraiya's shoulders to draw in natural energy. "Boil release, unrivaled strength," a voice nearby announced, and an armored figure charged. Han, in red armor, slammed the ground where Jiraiya had just been. Jiraiya leapt aside as a huge crater formed. Han glanced at him calmly. If the legendary Sannin were truly easy prey, Han would have died at Jiraiya or Fukasaku's hands long ago. Sage mode. Jiraiya completed the transformation. His face took on the toad-like markings. His nose even showed a slight toadish change. As he opened his sage perception, he exhaled. "The situation's not as bad as I thought." With no warning from the perception squad and a suspected traitor within Konoha ranks, Jiraiya had feared half his force was already dead by the time he activated Sage. Instead, roughly 700 Konoha shinobi were still fighting. What Jiraiya didn't know was that Iwagakure's leadership was equally uncertain. Reshi had indeed received intelligence placing Konoha's camp, but the report didn't clearly say it was the main force. Reshi wasn't a reckless commander who'd blindly charge on a tip. He suspected a trap. Still, intelligence ignored would be a wasted chance. Reshi compromised. He split his 2,000-man force into three. His elite 500, including the Jinchuriki and the Explosion Corps, would press the attack. The two other squads would hang back to either bail him out if it was a trap or converge if it was genuine. He hadn't expected to stumble straight into Konoha's camp and be discovered by patrollers at the very edge, where it looked like Konoha's perception team had been wiped out. Seeing what he thought were only a handful of defenders, Reshi ordered a reckless bombardment, convinced he was about to win glory and crush the Sannin-led force. Summoning technique, Jiraiya bellowed again, calling Gamabunta and Gamaken. You two stop the Five Tails Jinchuriki. I'll go after the commander. If he could take out Reshi, it would not only stop the attack but demoralize Iwagakure's troops. Gamabunta protested. What, me against a tailed beast? I'll try my best, Gamaken said in his booming voice. Just for a little while, please. Jiraiya flashed toward Reshi. Gamaken leapt at Han, swinging his fishing spear. Han, fueled by boil release, gripped the spear and refused to be moved. Under the boil release's power, Han's strength rose astonishingly. Die! Gamabunta slashed with his short sword, a blade enormous by any human standard, but Han dodged with body flicker and without hesitation unleashed his tailed beast chakra. A dark red torrent transformed him into a huge five-tailed monster. Jiraiya felt Han's chakra swell as he closed on Reshi. Of the fighters present, Jiraiya was the only one qualified to take a Jinchuriki head-on. Minato could only contain him. He had to finish Reshi quickly. Fire release, great flame bullet. Jiraiya condensed Sage Chakra into oil, spat it out, and ignited it with fire nature transformation. A roaring wall of flame incinerated several Iwagakure ninja nearby and hurtled at Reshi. Even Reshi's hardened training could not face this power directly. He rapidly retreated. Iwakura spat an explosion-release stone to block part of the flames and help his captain retreat, but Jiraiya immediately summoned another giant toad, a greenish-blue behemoth, and sent Gamahiro after Iwakura while he resumed tailing Reshi. Those who can, withdraw now. The enemy has reinforcements, Jiraiya ordered, sensing distant chakra. Reshi had fired a signal flare. Sage Art, Hair Needle Senbon. Under the sharp power of Sage Chakra, Jiraiya's hair hardened into white needle-like projectiles. Even Reshi's hardening could only block some. Blood ran freely down his body under the relentless barrage. What a waste! Jiraiya muttered as he pressed the attack. Roshi, pursuing Minato, abandoned his chase of Minato and lunged for Jiraiya instead. He spat a massive lava-like boil-release fireball. Minato formed a Rasengan and slammed it into Roshi, but Roshi's boil-release armor shrugged it off and Minato even scalded his own hand. Such high defense, Minato said wryly. If an enemy's defense outstripped a Rasengan, Minato's options grew slim. Roshi pushed on toward Jiraiya, ignoring Minato because if he turned back, Reshi might die. Reshi was far from Roshi's favorite, but losing a demolition squad captain to Jiraiya would be a serious blow to Iwa's morale. Water release, water-severing wave, Shima interjected, slicing Roshi's lava ball into harmless steam and yelling, Jiraiya, fall back! The Four Tails Jinchuriki and the Fifth's killer were closing. Jiraiya had no choice but to cancel his own ninjutsu and vanish. He was so close, Jiraiya thought looking at Reshi, injured and bleeding. If the Jinchuriki had been 2 seconds later, Reshi would have died to Jiraiya's Sage Art. Minato, use area attacks to cover the retreat, Jiraiya said as he gathered chakra. His goal was simple now. Buy time for as many Konoha ninja as possible to flee. With his strength and Minato's flying thunder god, they could keep Iwagakure from completely encircling them. If enough men made it back, Konoha could regroup and strike again. Sage Art, Gomon. Jiraiya and the two sages combined their sage-powered elements, Fukasaku Wind, Shima Fire, and Jiraiya's Toad Oil, to create the fearsome Gomon. One unlucky Iwagakure shinobi failed to dodge and was consumed instantly. Minato leaped onto Gamabunta's head, formed seals, and with Gamabunta's Toad Oil, unleashed a massive fire-release, toad oil bullet that incinerated everything within tens of meters. Roshi, pushed to extremes, poured tailed beast power into his body and grew into a towering ape-like form. He condensed a black, crackling orb, a tailed beast ball. "Don't," Reshi croaked, wounded and desperate, trying to stop him. That attack would split the battlefield and make pursuit impossible. Roshi either didn't hear or didn't care. He threw the tailed beast ball between Minato and Jiraiya. Minato teleported instantly to Jiraiya's side. For convenience in battle, Jiraiya always carried one of Minato's flying thunder god kunai. Minato placed his hand on Jiraiya, activated the technique again, and teleported them to a distant marked location. Jiraiya released the summoning contract and the toads returned to Mount Myoboku on their own. "That was close. Good thing you were here, Minato," Jiraiya said, patting his comrade's shoulder. Without Minato's speed and support, this fight would have been disastrous. Between the surprise attack by the Sarutobi Jonin, the Jinchuriki, and Iwagakure's elite, they had narrowly escaped catastrophe. "Jiraiya-sensei, Iwagakure's behavior in this campaign is too strange," Minato said soberly. Jiraiya agreed. Who would have thought a Sarutobi Jonin could be a spy? The Sarutobi clan had a long, proud history and gave Konoha leaders like Hiruzen his family name. Members should be above betrayal. After Sarutobi Hiromi disappeared, the situation looked exactly like when that Iwagakure assassin team disappeared, Minato continued. After teleporting away, he had been watching Hiromi. Hiromi's disappearance resembled an Earth release burrow, but something was different. His presence had vanished entirely, as if he didn't exist. Yet Minato knew Hiromi was real. He had managed to place a Flying Thunder God mark on him. It was only the chaos of battle and Hiromi's speed that had kept Minato from catching him. "That makes it worse," Jiraiya rubbed his forehead. He wasn't the quickest thinker, and all these anomalies were taxing him. "But if you left a Flying Thunder God mark, Minato, it'll be easy next. Tea time. When we meet him again, just teleport to him and capture him for interrogation." Minato nodded. The Flying Thunder God mark persisted, unless the caster removed it. Next time they'd have Hiromi in their hands. "Let's gather the troops and report to the village," Jiraiya said, dusting himself off. Despite the setback, he was in reasonable spirits. He had lost worse. During the Second Shinobi World War, he'd been beaten by the rain. Back in Konoha, Hiruzen Sarutobi briefed Mu Yue on the latest from the grass country. "That's how it stands. Our grass country contingent has been hit hard. Iwagakure is active there now. No one knows when they'll push for the border." "Third Hokage, is there anything I can do?" Mu Yue asked. He was known more as a ninjutsu prodigy than as a strategist. Hiruzen had called him in for a single purpose. "Mu Yue, I'm glad you have the resolve. I now order you to be commander of the support force. Lead 500 shinobi to the grass country and assist Jiraiya." Hiruzen's smile turned serious as he gave the command. 570. The value of Mu Yue's intelligence. "The forces have already started assembling at Training Ground 11, Hiruzen Sarutobi said. The summons had come so suddenly it had been treated as an emergency. Many normal procedures were skipped simply to move fast. Minutes before Mu Yue had entered the Hokage's office, Hiruzen had still been in a high-level meeting. Konoha's troops in grass country had been routed with alarming speed. Not long before, they had even pushed the Iwagakure contingent back to the border of the Land of Earth. But then, everything turned around. Konoha's commanders didn't have time to figure out precisely why. The meeting quickly decided to form a relief force for grass country and move immediately. There was no time for hesitancy. If grass country fell entirely, the northwest of the Land of Fire would be exposed. Iwagakure could pour through the border into the Land of Fire, which would not only be an embarrassment to the Fire Daimyo, but could also threaten Konoha itself. It was known that the Iwagakure force in grass country included 2 Jinchuriki who could transform into full-tailed beasts. Even Danzo Shimura, who often challenged Hiruzen, didn't push hard this time. He had a single objection about the choice of commander. He wanted Orochimaru, who was stationed in the Land of Hot Water, sent directly to grass country with part of the force, while Konoha contributed reinforcements. Hiruzen refused. He didn't want to rob one front to strengthen another. Kumogakure had been quiet recently, But Hiruzen didn't trust that complacency. If rumors of Konoha's defeat spread, Kumo might probe the borders. Without Orochimaru guarding the land of hot water, that line could be endangered. In the end, Hiruzen appointed Mu Yue to lead the support unit. Given Mu Yue's ties to Konoha and the urgency of the situation, Danzo let the matter drop. "Are my students on the roster?" Mu Yue asked after a moment's thought. With the shinobi world so unstable, he wanted his disciples close. Konoha was not defenseless, but it was wartime. Hiruzen wouldn't leave talented jonin idle. Obito and the others were standout jonin-level fighters, too valuable to be sent on casual missions where they might fall into traps like those of Uchiha Madara. If they were going into battle, Mu Yue wanted them at his side. At least he could protect them, or bring them back if things went badly. "They're all included," Hiruzen replied. Given how dire things looked in grass country, the relief force couldn't be weak or sent to their deaths. Kakashi and the others were not only powerful, but had a special relationship with Mu Yue, making them appropriate jonin picks. Of course, if Mu Yue preferred they remain in Konoha, Hiruzen would have accepted that. Mu Yue's safety mattered most. Mu Yue had no other requests. "These are intelligence briefs on the grass country front," Hiruzen added, handing over a scroll. There wasn't time for a lengthy explanation. Hiruzen had given only a summary in the office. Mu Yue bowed, took the scroll, and left. "I'm counting on you, Mu Yue," Hiruzen said as he watched him go. If they lost here again, Konoha's position would become precarious. Mu Yue headed straight for Training Ground 11. When he arrived, the unit was hardly assembled. Messages and orders had been sent at almost the same time he'd been summoned. Mimurabe Ketsu, the vice commander, stepped forward to report. "Commander Mu Yue, I'm Mimurabe Ketsu. Over 100 shinobi have gathered so far. 15 jonin and 15 special jonin are present." Mu Yue nodded. Jonin received orders first and moved faster. As he took his place, he got familiar faces, his disciples among them. "Minato-sensei, I was thinking you might be the commander. My guessing is pretty good," Obito called out with a laugh. Everyone had been summoned as Mu Yue left the Hokage's office. Except for Yamato, who was absent, the assigned jonin had arrived. Kakashi glanced at Obito with his usual impassive look. This wasn't guesswork. Mu Yue's sudden visit to the Hokage and the urgent call made it plain who was in charge. Mu Yue returned Obito's smile and looked over the 15 jonin. 5 of them were his own students. The rest were familiar. Konoha's jonin circle wasn't large. Nara Suzaku and Shibi Aburame had gone with Mu Yue earlier into grass country. Hyuga Hizashi had fought with him in the Hidden Mist, and Akimichi Doton was someone he'd met at a jonin council through Minato Namikaze. The official jonin were mostly clan shinobi. The special jonin were largely ordinary but experienced hands. The jonin glanced back at Mu Yue. Outside of high-ranking officers and Lady Tsunade, Mu Yue was the most qualified to lead this force. If Shikaku Nara had been present, he might have been comparable. Even though Shikaku was not strong personally, his intellect and the support of the Akimichi and Yamanaka made him formidable. But with the usual Ino Shika Cho not in Konoha, Mu Yue stood out. "I never thought he'd be given command so soon after becoming a jonin," Akimichi Doton murmured. It had only been a little over 2 years since Mu Yue attained jonin rank. "Having Mu Yue in command is reassuring," Hyuga Hizashi said with a slight smile. He was the unit's perception lead and had known Mu Yue would take command beforehand. Short tenure as a jonin meant little compared to Mu Yue's achievements. Mu Yue watched the assembled unit without speaking. His disciples, Obito, Kakashi, and the others, were quiet too, understanding the gravity of the situation. After everyone was present, Mu Yue spoke. Konoha's force in grass country was defeated very recently. His words fell like a bomb. Shock ran through the ranks, surprise that an apparently successful campaign had collapsed so suddenly, and worry for comrades already on the field. Obito's mind went to Jiraiya and Minato Namikaze. Both were known to be operating there. Jiraiya, though boastful, had been kind to Obito. Minato was someone he revered. "They should be all right," Kakashi said quietly, but he couldn't be sure. In the timeline Kakashi remembered, Minato would die after becoming Hokage, and Jiraiya would fall to the Akatsuki later. Time could be changed, especially with the new developments, but Kakashi's worry wasn't about those specific fates. He was worried about Mu Yue. The rout came too suddenly. If Konoha's force had seemed to hold the advantage and Iwagakure suddenly flipped the situation, something powerful had to be at work. Still too weak, Kakashi thought grimly. With their current abilities, only someone like Metkai might make a difference. Most of them were still barely teenagers. Training time hadn't been long enough. He hoped he could master the Yang Seal in time. It would boost his combat effectiveness dramatically. Shisui's expression was grave too. He was younger than Kakashi and felt time was tight. Mu Yue gave the unit little time to linger and continued, steady and direct. Our mission is to support the Grass Country forces and prevent the Iwagakure contingent from entering the Land of Fire. Hiruzen's order had not demanded that Mu Yue annihilate the Iwa force. His task was more pragmatic: establish a firm defense and stop Iwagakure from breaking into the mainlands of the Land of Fire. If Mu Yue repelled them and crippled their forces, that would be a bonus. "Move out!" Mu Yue barked after a moment. No one argued. They moved quickly, leaving Konoha to head for Grass Country. For Shinobi, this was not an extraordinary order. When an urgent mission came, they were given objectives and expected to act. This was a large, emergency collective operation, and loyalty to the village drove them. No one wanted Iwagakure to reach the heartland and threaten Konoha. While the force traveled, Mu Yue began to read the scroll Hiruzen had given him. Normally, he wouldn't be able to study during a march at his own speed, but the unit's movement was slower, and it left him time. Sarutobi Hiromi betrayed and assassinated Jiraiya, using techniques similar to the Iwagakure assassination squad. Mu Yue's face tightened as he read. Hiruzen had only hinted at the involvement of an Iwagakure assassination team in the office. The scroll contained far more detail. The clues pointed strongly. He estimated a 98% chance, if not higher, that White Zetsu were involved. The ninjutsu that erased presence very quickly was the mayfly technique, and the reason Sarutobi Hiromi had betrayed his comrades was that he wasn't Sarutobi Hiromi at all, but a White Zetsu using a perfect transformation technique. Ordinary White Zetsu lacked raw strength. A skilled chuunin could kill one when given warning. What made them deadly was the toolkit, the highest-grade transformation technique in the Hokage lineage, which could mimic a ninja's very chakra, and the mayfly stealth technique, which let them merge with the ground, erase presence, and move with high speed. Together, they made White Zetsu the premier intelligence operatives and assassins on any battlefield. If White Zetsu was on the field, even a shinobi like Jiraiya could be surprised and defeated. That said, Mu Yue thought, they're not unbeatable. He had a subtle but potent counter, his appraisal technique. No disguise, no matter how perfect, could withstand a look from that ability. It revealed chakra and skill at a glance. The only drawback was that he had to see the target to appraise it. So far, no White Zetsu had shown themselves openly enough for him to use it, but if one played undercover inside his ranks, Mu Yue could unmask them instantly. An intelligence Jiraiya was only theoretical. Mu Yue had a real tool that could see through chakra and illusion. He read on, absorbing the rest of the brief, and prepared himself for what lay ahead. 571. Counterattack Plan. Before reaching Grass Country, Mu Yue used Konoha's special communication channel to contact the Kusa Country Reinforcement Force. Out of caution, he didn't give details about troop numbers or other intelligence. He discussed only the rendezvous. Jiraiya was glad to hear help was coming, but he refused Mu Yue's request to meet immediately and told Mu Yue their current situation. After regrouping, Jiraiya's force still numbered 670. He suspected there were spies still embedded in his ranks, so he had split the force into smaller units to stall the Iwa ninja. After 2 probes, Jiraiya confirmed spies remained, but he couldn't identify who or how many. He felt a rendezvous before finding those traitors would only repeat past mistakes. "Commander Mu Yue, how should we reply?" Nara Suzaku asked. He had thought it through, but couldn't devise a good solution. The obvious approach was to find the spies first, yet Jiraiya's force was stronger and full of elite talent. If they hadn't found the spies, the reinforcements might be compromised. Mu Yue looked thoughtful and didn't answer at once. Finding White Zetsu hidden among them wasn't difficult for him. It would simply require evaluating them one by one. He was considering another tack: use the White Zetsu against Iwagakure. If White Zetsu could act as spies for Iwa, then Iwa's forces must also be infiltrated by White Zetsu, who would carry whatever information they were given. Mu Yue could feed false intelligence through those channels and mislead Iwa. Only the vanguard of the support force has arrived. 50 ninja, Mu Yue said after a moment. Let's rendezvous first and discuss the upcoming battle. You can reply like that, he added, then told them to include the note that he himself was with the vanguard. Nara Suzaku and the others stared in confusion. A rendezvous before they'd found the spies risked exposing their plans. Why would Mu Yue propose meeting now? The only possible explanation was that Mu Yue intended to take a small vanguard and try to detect the traitors. Commander Mu Yue, are you planning to bring 50 ninja to help Jiraiya-sama find the spies? Nara Suzaku asked. Mu Yue nodded. Yes. I have a sensory ability that lets me sense others' goodwill or malice toward me. It won't perfectly identify spies, but it'll narrow the search. The effect of that explanation stunned them. Mu Yue didn't want to openly reveal his true appraisal techniques. Still, his claim made sense. Whether called an appraisal technique or developed along the lines of Kenbun Shokuhaki, it was a powerful way to identify who might harbor ill intent. Nara Suzaku and the others were pleasantly surprised, sensing malice would be an excellent filter. Mu Yue was well regarded and kind. Few allies would naturally feel malice toward him, whereas an enemy spy who knew Mu Yue's status might very well wish him harm. In that case, it's appropriate for you to lead a small force to rendezvous first, Mimurabe Ketsu agreed. 50 capable ninja could handle most contingencies without exposing the full support force. If the spies could be located quickly, the situation might be turned to their favor. Once Jiraiya replied with a rendezvous point, Mu Yue selected his team. From now on, we are the vanguard of the support force. The true support force hasn't arrived in Grass Country yet. Do you understand? He told the 50 assembled. Except for me, under no circumstances are you to reveal the true intelligence to anyone. Mu Yue reminded them that White Zetsu must absorb a target's chakra to perform their impersonation jutsu. He was confident his chakra could not be absorbed, but he could not make that guarantee for everyone else. The ninja listened seriously and nodded. To conserve the support force's strength, Mu Yue took only his 5 disciples along with 45 genin and chuunin as the vanguard. He left most of the jonin and special jonin with the remainder of the reinforcement force. Approaching the rendezvous point, Mu Yue first used his sensory bird ability and then activated his Byakugan to scan the surroundings. Only after confirming no immediate danger did he lead his men forward. He kept his Byakugan open the whole time. With the Yang seal, his chakra reserves were abundant and could handle the extra drain. Jiraiya, Minato Namikaze, and 2 of Jiraiya's other disciples were already at the meeting point. Seeing Mu Yue approach with his contingent, Jiraiya stepped forward. This time, Iwagakure's intelligence work is truly strange. They're incredibly thorough. I don't even know how many spies are in our force, Jiraiya said. Jiraiya had arranged the rendezvous with great secrecy, only very few knew about it, and he had brought only his most trusted. He no longer blindly trusted clan ninja. If a Sarutobi Jonin could turn traitor, anyone might. I've seen the battlefield intel, and there are indeed suspicious points, Mu Yue said, then glanced at the 50 behind him. Everyone except Kakashi Hatake and Uchiha Obito, spread out and keep watch. Mu Yue's disciples stayed close. The rest were sent to the periphery to reduce the number of ears and eyes near the main discussion. Obito could not help but ask, Toad Uncle, Minato-sensei, are you both uninjured? Minato shook his head with a smile to indicate he was fine. Jiraiya puffed up indignantly. What are you talking about? I'm one of the Sannin. This little trouble won't bruise me. And it's not Toad Uncle, it's Toad Sage, he declared, tapping Obito's head. Okay, Toad Uncle, Obito replied blankly. In his mind, the greatest were Mu Yue and the Six-Path Sage. Jiraiya was less impressive by comparison. So Hira, we're really invisible, even though we fought alongside Minato and helped train, Dekai sighed. So Hira-senpai, Dekai-senpai, are you injured? I can heal you, Rin Nohara offered softly. Heh, no need, Dekai chuckled. His complaint was only that he and Sohira got no attention. Ignoring Obito's bluster, Jiraiya stared at Mu Yue. It was normal to have subordinates on guard, but sending almost everyone to vigilance suggested Mu Yue intended to say something significant. After appraising Jiraiya's small unit, Mu Yue spoke. Actually, the entire support force has already arrived. Besides me, there are 500 ninja, 15 jonin and 15 special jonin included, he said. Huh? Didn't you say only the vanguard arrived? Deikai asked, surprised. They're being cautious, trying to keep intel from spies, Minato said. He had felt something strange when the original message came through. A 50-man force on a forced march into grass country made little sense unless those 50 were extraordinary. If Mu Yue can detect malice, that's the key, Jiraiya said, eyes brightening. If someone hated Mu Yue enough to be hostile, they'd stand out. With him leading the screening, we have a real shot at finding the spies. Mu Yue outlined the plan. Use his ability to find likely traitors, then turn the trick around by feeding false information through those spies to mislead Iwagakure. If that succeeded, the 450 hidden ninja with the main support force would become a decisive surprise. What next? Do we inspect each small unit one by one, or bring everyone together? Jiraiya asked. Gather them together, Mu Yue replied. Going unit by unit is too slow and risks exposing the plan. We should assemble everyone, inspect them at once, and then start the deception. The faster we act, the less time the enemy has to adapt. Jiraiya agreed. When the plan was roughly set, Mu Yue called his sentries back and joined Jiraiya's smaller group. I'm sorry, looks like you'll have to take care of Kushina after the war, Minato, Mu Yue said with a smile as they walked. Minato managed a wry smile and sighed. I hope so. Too many surprises already. He'd sent Mu Yue a letter warning of his premonitions, but events had still outpaced expectations. If it weren't for Mu Yue's ability, Minato thought, the Kusa force might have been stuck in passive defense for a long time despite reinforcements. Kakashi, who had seen many battlefields, thought, if the Kusa force had fallen because of a spy network, Mu Yue's sensory ability would be a thorn in Iwagakure's side. Could that be why Mu Yue had been surrounded and slain by many Iwa experts earlier? Shh! Say less when we get there, Kakashi muttered to Obito. They now knew confidential intelligence, and a careless talker could ruin everything. Obito's face darkened. Kakashi, you underestimate me. I'm not some loudmouth. Kakashi only smiled faintly. Obito, furious at the implication, swore he'd prove himself. He would keep his mouth shut and avoid talking to anyone not his friend once they arrived. Kakashi noted Obito's reaction and nodded inwardly. As the commander, Jiraiya carried the heaviest burden and the largest number of shinobi on his shoulders. The small unit he led numbered over 60, more than even Mu Yue's so-called vanguard. That many men in a single group was dangerous when enemy spies might be hiding among them. So Jiraiya refused to keep a fixed base. They moved every day to avoid being discovered and ambushed. This is just the vanguard of our reinforcements. More will arrive soon, and then it'll be our turn to counterattack. Jiraiya told the men, gathering them together as Mu Yue arrived with his contingent. After the painful defeat and the retreat they'd suffered, the grass country unit's morale was low, and Mu Yue's arrival was meant to shore it up. Lord Mu Yue, someone recognized him and brightened. Mu Yue was a powerhouse on a par with Minato Namikaze. Any additional fighter of his caliber could change the tide. Lord Mu Yue once killed a Jinchuriki on the Hidden Mist battlefield, a Konoha shinobi muttered. If he can take down an Iwa Jinchuriki now, let's see how proud those Iwa forces are. No one wanted a tailed beast ball erupting in the middle of a fight. Obito watched the men's faces and felt a deep yearning. The kind of shinobi he wanted to become, someone who could bring peace, end wars, and protect people, was the kind of presence Mu Yue gave. Jiraiya and Minato scanned the unit for any sign of contempt or unease, but saw none. It all depends on Mu Yue's perception, Jiraiya said quietly. A spy good enough to infiltrate this force would know how to hide their emotions. Mu Yue smiled gently and raised everyone's spirits. Hold on a little longer. The main support force will arrive soon. Victory will be Konoha's. As he casually handed out a bowl of chicken soup, he flicked to business. He used his appraisal technique on the shinobi before him. Name, Yamanaka Kosuke, he intoned. Chakra, 4,600. Skills, Yin Release, Chakra Nature Transformation, Proficient. Mind Transfer Jutsu, Proficient. Name, Miki Hanpei. Skills, Fire Release, Chakra Nature Transformation, Proficient. Victory belongs to our Konoha, shouted a nearby Konoha shinobi, heartened. Mu Yue's calm inspection continued. Name White Zetsu, Chakra 13,000, skills, Mayfly technique, impersonation technique. He memorized the disguised face of the White Zetsu without changing expression and moved on. The appraisal technique reassured him. There was only one White Zetsu in Jiraiya's small unit. Next, we'll rendezvous with the other scattered teams and prepare to counterattack, Jiraiya ordered. The men were used to sudden movements and immediately began to mobilize. Mu Yue, have you sensed anything? Jiraiya asked softly, his disciple at his side. Logically, Jiraiya's unit was the likeliest place for a spy, the largest group, and the commander himself present. Mu Yue thought for a moment. There's a shinobi who's very likely an Iwagakure spy. He didn't speak with absolute certainty. His phrasing left room for doubt. Highly probable? Jiraiya pressed. He harbors an extreme malice toward me, Mu Yue said without emotion. If given the chance, he wouldn't hesitate to kill me. It's an irreconcilable hatred. Highly probable? Jiraiya frowned. Mu Yue was being cautious. Even if a Konoha shinobi held a grudge, it usually didn't look like that. Who is it? Mu Yue produced paper and brush from a scroll and quickly sketched the disguised appearance of the White Zetsu. He handed the drawing to Jiraiya. Probably looks like this. I don't know him personally, so I'm not sure of his name. Jiraiya studied the sketch. If I'm not mistaken, he seems to be named Sakota Seiichi. He's a chuunin. Jiraiya didn't know every shinobi in a 1,000-man force, only the jonin and chuunin he'd met. But since the units had been dispersed and they now needed to find spies, he'd made a point of memorizing names. It's him, Minato said, surprised and troubled. Sakota Seiichi isn't from a clan. His family were residents who joined Konoha in its early days. I didn't expect him to turn spy. Minato had known Sakota's family had been sheltered by Konoha, and that Sakota had grown up under the village's protection. It was hard for him to understand why such a person would betray Konoha. But remembering that even the Sarutobi clan had produced a spy made the idea less impossible. If a jonin from the Sarutobi could be compromised, anyone could. Obito looked bewildered. I thought spies came disguised from other villages. Are you saying they're Konoha shinobi who defected? Minato shook his head. Even the most skilled transformation technique can't fool a sensory ninja. Everyone's chakra is different, imperceptible to normal shinobi, but not to sensory types. Jiraiya sighed. Money, life, power, status, there are many temptations. He didn't know what Iwagakure had promised Sakota, or what leverage they might have had. The fact remained, they were spies. This complicates things, Jiraiya said. If word of this gets back to the village, morale could be crushed. Let's wait until the entire unit has assembled before deciding anything, Mu Yue advised. For now, don't act. We can't let the White Zetsu know they've been exposed before our plan is set. We can use them to mislead Iwagakure. No one could be certain there weren't more spies in other teams. To avoid a prolonged delay, Jiraiya issued the highest-level assembly order. All mobile teams were to converge as quickly as possible. Because of their mobility, the force swelled fast. Mu Yue's group grew from 100 to 200, then 300, and, when fully assembled, roughly 700 strong. Mu Yue kept using appraisal technique as they gathered. By the time the sweep ended, Mu Yue had identified 3 White Zetsu: Sakota Seiichi, the injured Aburame Jonin, Longye Aburame, and Hinata Hyuga, the last Hyuga clan ninja in Jiraiya's unit. Jiraiya was stunned. Even a Byakugan-wielding Hyuga was a spy. No wonder they'd been routed so decisively. What has this world come to, that even a Hyuga would betray us? He asked, baffled. The Hyuga were a peculiar clan, a strict main house and branch house system, with the main house holding life or death control over branch members via the caged bird seal. Hinata came from a branch house. The main house rarely fought on the front lines. For someone from that background to turn was alarming. This is abnormal. There must be something behind it, Minato said grimly. He couldn't overstate the seriousness. This was easily the worst spy incident since Konoha's founding. The Hyuga, Aburame, and Sarutobi clans were veteran families with members in critical positions. If such established clans contained spies for another village, the fallout would be unpredictable. If they could be compromised, what did that imply about ordinary shinobi? We must uncover the spies' secrets, Jiraiya said. But right now, the priority is to stop the Iwagakure force. Mu Yue agreed silently. He knew why, even if he wouldn't say it plainly. Preventing the enemy from invading the Land of Fire was more urgent than exposing the traitors at this moment. Mu Yue's right, Jiraiya nodded. Stopping the invasion comes first. The morale hit can be dealt with later. They began discussing tactics. Having identified the spies, they could turn the situation to their advantage. The Iwagakure force believed they had the upper hand. Konoha's troops could use the spies and a hidden support unit to create misinformation and spring a surprise. Arresting the spies outright would be a mistake. Instead, they would exploit the information gap and set a trap. They set to work planning how best to use their newfound, dangerous assets. 573. There has never been such a rich battle. Night had fallen over the temporary camp. Inside a plain, hastily erected tent, a number of jonin from the ninja force gathered. There were no chairs, only a large table of stone formed with earth release, and spread across it was a single map of the grass country and the surrounding regions. Mu Yue and Jiraiya stood side by side on the north side of the table. Minato Namikaze stood behind Mu Yue, Kakashi behind Jiraiya, and the other jonin were arrayed around the table, attentive and waiting. I imagine many of you have questions, Jiraiya began slowly. Why we regrouped so quickly after dispersing, and why Lord Mu Yue is here. A few of the jonin nodded. The sudden shift and the lack of information made it hard to make sense of things. Jiraiya continued, Lord Mu Yue is leading a support unit that will join us against Iwagakure. Because the front is critical, he selected an elite vanguard to get here as fast as possible. The main body of the support unit hasn't arrived yet. Only the 50 elite shinobi of the vanguard have reached us. Faces around the table brightened. One jonin couldn't contain himself and asked, Lord Mu Yue, how many are in the entire support unit? Mu Yue answered seriously, including the elite vanguard, there are 1,000 ninjas. A ripple of excitement went through the gathered jonin. 1,000 reinforcements at once. This was the strongest single reinforcement they had seen from Konoha in a long time. The man who had asked earlier sat up straighter. Konoha had never been prodigal with manpower, and after years of war and attrition, the village's active ninja numbers had dwindled. The total official ninja count since Konoha's founding was only around 12,000. Given the secrecy around each village's numbers, if an active ninja ranking existed, Konoha might well be near the bottom among the 5 great shinobi villages. Obito, who had been quiet, watched Mu Yue with a private grin. He suspected the number was exaggerated. White Zetsu, disguised as Hinata, played the part of a surprised bystander and inwardly took quick mental notes to transmit later. We dispersed earlier because our strength was insufficient and we feared being discovered and wiped out, Jiraiya said. But with 1,000 reinforcements, there's no need to hide. We can regroup. The jonin murmured agreement. With equal numbers, Konoha had never been afraid. Where should we meet the support unit and set up a temporary base? Jiraiya asked, prompting suggestions as everyone studied the map. When the meeting wound down, Jiraiya delivered a stern reminder. There may already be spies among us. The content of this meeting must not be leaked. He spoke with the authority of experience. When Jiraiya's assassination by a Sarutobi jonin had occurred before, few had witnessed it. He had deliberately concealed the circumstances, so the force did not know the defeat had been caused by a spy. The jonin around the table took Jiraiya's warning seriously. Don't be too nervous, Jiraiya added with a smile. The people I called are all absolutely trustworthy. If nothing goes wrong, we'll turn this defeat into victory. The gathered jonin exchanged glances and were reassured. Most present were from established ninja clans or were veteran jonin with long records, unlikely places for a spy to hide. White Zetsu, however, was inwardly delighted. He was, of course, not Hinata at all. He toyed with the thought of dropping the transformation technique and revealing himself just to see the reaction, then laughed silently and swallowed the impulse. He still had a job to do. Collect and transmit information. If the plan succeeded and Jiraiya and the others were trapped and desperate, he would have his moment to mock them and slip away. After the meeting, the others dispersed. Jiraiya, Mu Yue, and Minato stayed behind long enough to vanish in pairs, employing shadow clones as cover. Eventually, the 3 met again in a secluded spot. The earlier meeting had been bait for the spy. This was the real briefing, with only the three of them present. "The bait is set," Jiraiya said, gazing toward the northwest where Iwagakure's forces were located. "Now it's up to whether Iwa takes it." Very few knew the true operational plan. Besides Mu Yue, Jiraiya, and their immediate disciples, only the high-ranking officers of the incoming support unit were in the loop. "From their posture, Iwa intends to wipe out our unit in the grass country in one decisive strike," Minato observed. "They'll bite, but swallowing this bait won't be easy." The 1,000-person reinforcement claimed earlier had been part of the ruse to lure Iwa in. In truth, the combined force of the support unit and Jiraiya's unit amounted to about 1,200 shinobi. Based on current observations, Iwagakure likely fielded at least 1,800, roughly 600 more than Konoha. 600 could make up a substantial unit by itself. "The overall situation still favors them," Minato said. "A total annihilation of Iwa would be difficult." "Then let's aim to destroy half of them," Mu Yue replied. Jiraiya nodded. "Half would be a significant blow. If that news reaches Iwa, Onoki will be hurting for a long time." Half of 1,800 is 900. Raising or producing 900 capable shinobi required massive resources. "If you defeat the Four Tails Jinchuriki this time, you'll truly be Konoha's top of the younger generation," Jiraiya joked, clapping Mu Yue on the shoulder. Mu Yue had volunteered to face the Four Tails Jinchuriki, claiming recent breakthroughs with his water release would be enough to handle the beast and its escorts. Jiraiya then nudged Minato. "You should train harder. Why don't you go to Mount Myoboku and learn Sage Mode?" Minato shook his head, half smiling, half exasperated. "Don't joke, Jiraiya. I can't make it in time, and Fukasaku said last time my chakra control still isn't sufficient." Sage Mode required not just technique but a large reserve and strong control of chakra. While Minato had talent, his current chakra condition didn't meet the standard. "Lack of chakra is a hard fact," Jiraiya admitted, rubbing his chin. "Otherwise, with your talent, Minato, you might learn it quickly under pressure." Jiraiya himself had labored long over Sage Mode, practicing whenever he could, rather than living continuously on Mount Myoboku, a luxury that extended the time it took. Compared to someone like Naruto, who had certain advantages, Jiraiya's progress had been slow and hard-won. A little way off, Obito lay back against a tree and stared up at the night sky. "This feels so different from the last mission," he muttered. Kakashi sat on a branch nearby. "We did suffer a heavy defeat," he answered. Obito glanced over in surprise. "Kakashi, why aren't you asleep?" "So why aren't you?" Kakashi countered. Obito scratched his head and admitted, "I'm worried about the spy in our unit and about the mood among everyone. It feels off." Obito had been through much, but he had never been in a unit that suffered such a face-down defeat, or had a Konoha shinobi turn traitor. Kakashi was blunt. "There's no use worrying. Once someone becomes a spy, whatever their reason, they're an enemy of Konoha. And the unit's spirit? One big victory will bring back the old feeling." Obito wanted to say more about the deeper changes the defeat had exposed, but he couldn't find the words. He sighed instead. Kakashi, watching him, gave a dry answer to the unspoken question. "I'm keeping an eye on you, just in case you might accidentally leak something." Obito scowled, offended, but it was late. He muttered curses inwardly and lay down. He fell asleep almost immediately. Kakashi activated his transparent world briefly to scan the area, then closed his eyes as well. "Iwakura-sama, our Anbu have intercepted critical new intelligence on the Konoha forces." A jonin from Iwagakure burst into the command tent, face bright with excitement. Iwakura, jolted awake from a short nap, sat bolt upright. The phrase, critical intelligence, always meant something that could decide a battle. The last time Iwa had scored a surprise victory, it had been because they knew the enemy's dispositions in advance. "We've got confirmation of Konoha's reinforcements," the jonin reported, practically trembling. "We've even got their planned movement." Iwakura snatched the scroll and unrolled it. As he read, his eyes gleamed. The Konoha Reinforcement Vanguard, led by Hayate Mugetsu, has linked up with the Grass Country contingent. Total reinforcement strength, 1,000 ninja. Besides the elite detachment that arrived first, 950 are still moving toward the Grass Country. With every line, Iwakura's grin widened. Reshi had been badly wounded and evacuated to the rear for treatment, leaving Iwakura as acting commander of the Iwa force. This intelligence was the opening he'd been waiting for, a chance to win a decisive victory while Reshi was absent, to shed the acting from his title and rack up the kind of battlefield merits that could catapult him into real power, perhaps even a nomination for 4th Tsuchikage. The idea of a triumph that would make the ninja world remember his name made him almost giddy. If we take out even 1,000 of them, it's a victory worth celebrating, he said, smiling. Bring the senior jonin together. Hold a strategy meeting. He could have issued a direct order like Reshi would, but Iwakura's authority wasn't that strong. He needed to build consensus. The Iwa officers were on edge from special training. No one slept deeply, and the commotion outside was enough to rouse most of them. In the meeting tent, an officer read the intercepted report aloud before Iwakura opened the floor. "What are your thoughts?" he asked. "Hit them now," Huoguang said bluntly. "We have precise intel. This is the time to strike and annihilate the Konoha force." Others agreed. With such detailed information, few would choose caution. "My plan matches yours," Iwakura said. "We don't just fight, we crush the Konoha defense in the grass country and push into the land of fire itself." He knew the high command in Iwagakure usually preferred a conservative posture. An offensive into the land of fire was bold, but the high command had effectively green-lit this engagement by sanctioning their operations, and a major victory would secure him both glory and promotion. "Even with the reinforcements, they still won't outnumber us. But we should defeat them in detail," he continued. "We take the grass country detachment before the main reinforcements link up, then deal with the 1,000 who are coming." The intercepted plan included a rendezvous point and a schedule indicating that Konoha's forces would rest early and depart early tonight. One jonin proposed a headlong strike immediately, but the idea was rejected. Rushing off now might waste effort or reveal their hand, and the intercepted schedule suggested a predictable rest point. Better to move quickly to where the enemy would pause and lie in ambush. Iwakura pointed to a map. "Their secondary temporary resting point is here, a deep stand of trees with a small river. They'll move by day and only stop briefly at night to confuse our scouts. We'll turn that against them, get there fast, hide, and wait. Whether they arrive early or on time, they'll walk into our trap." The report's level of detail convinced Iwakura this was genuine Konoha intelligence. He trusted his own Anbu unit's success, and the intercepted content read like something an enemy would plant to mislead. He never suspected that Mu Yue and Jiraiya had staged a ruse, tricking a number of Konoha jonin into attending a bogus meeting to manufacture exactly the kind of comprehensive information that would lure Iwagakure into a trap. With the plan set, the meeting wrapped up quickly. "You don't know your own strength until you fight," one jonin remarked with a satisfied smile. Recently, Iwa had felt like it was carrying the weight on the intelligence front. Against Jiraiya's force, they'd essentially had the advantage of perfect reconnaissance. The officers were pleased, perhaps unduly confident. Before dawn, Iwagakure's force was on the march. Though it was only 1 in the morning, no one dawdled. Iwakura watched the stars and imagined the victory ahead, how the entire ninja world would remember his name. As first light threatened the horizon, they reached the deep forest marked in the intercepted report. "Activate sensory jutsu. Sweep the area," Iwakura ordered. The sensory shinobi formed the seals, opened their eyes, and reported quickly. "Iwakura-sama, there are no chakra signatures in the vicinity." "Advance and set the ambush," Iwakura replied, pleased. Everything matched the intelligence. As he looked at the tall trees, he pictured each one as another Konoha shinobi about to be taken down. The terrain was risky, easy to attack, hard to hold, but that worked in Iwakura's favor. He organized patrols. Iwagakure had fewer sensory specialists than Konoha, and they couldn't keep them active constantly, so regular patrols were necessary. After a short time without incident, the force relaxed. "Our Anbu were right. This intelligence is flawless," one man murmured. They arranged watches and let the tired troops rest in shifts. Iwakura himself, with a commander's burdens, meant to steal a little sleep too. Boom! A blinding, crimson flash shattered the quiet. The tent where Iwakura had lain down was shaken by a violent explosion. He sprang up, wide awake. Before he could gather his bearings, another blast erupted like a chain reaction. crimson fire throwing dangerous light over the sleeping camps. Damn it, this was a trap! Iwakura's face hardened. The blasts were paper bomb explosions, deliberate, masked devices laid to catch them off guard. The intercepted intelligence had been a facade. Konoha had already been here and prepared their ambush down to the last detail. They had walked into a snare. Late at night, White Zetsu was returning to his unit after delivering the intelligence when he noticed Mu Yue and Minato Namikaze walking toward him. He greeted them calmly, no hint of alarm. His impersonation technique could even mimic chakra. He was almost a perfect copy of Hinata, only his thoughts were different. "You haven't gone to bed yet, Lord Mu Yue. Lord Minato?" he said. Mu Yue smiled, set a hand on White Zetsu's shoulder, and intoned, "Joutian ceiling." "Lord Mu Yue, what are you doing?" "I'm of the Hyuga clan." White Zetsu began, then froze as a restraining force invaded his body. His face changed. He tried to release chakra to fight it, but a swift, powerful strike from Minato slammed into him at the same instant. The punch, infused with chakra, forced the disguise to break. Unable to resist, White Zetsu was fully exposed and Mu Yue's sealing was completed. He could no longer mobilize chakra. "What kind of creature is this?" Minato frowned as he studied the being, human-like, but entirely white. After confirming the courier's identity as Hinata, they had dealt with the other two spies and now discovered that the traitors they'd expected weren't human at all, but biological constructs. "Maybe Iwagakure developed them for war," Mu Yue said casually. It wasn't an impossible guess. White Zetsu's blank, replicated appearance and the near-identical copies made it obvious he was a laboratory product. Madara Uchiha was a candidate for creating such things, but Mu Yue and Minato both knew Madara was old and dying. Whoever engineered these was someone with terrifying capability, though neither of them suspected the true origin, Otsutsuki Kaguya. "Even if they can be produced," Minato said, "they probably can't be made in vast numbers, otherwise it would be catastrophic." He pictured squads of White Zetsu assuming identities and assassinating from within and felt a chill. A handful of them had already tied up a 1,000-man unit. Hundreds would break morale. If even a fraction of an army could be replaced by spies, who could stand against it? Even with Mu Yue's abilities, handling a mass of those things would be a nightmare. If Mu Yue was at the front, the White Zetsu could strike the rear. If in Konoha, they could hit the battle lines. It was a war-born weapon. "That's why Iwagakure would hide production if they had it," Mu Yue agreed. "If they could mass-produce something that useful, they'd have put dozens in already." They secured the 3 captive White Zetsu together, left 2 shinobi to guard them, and the rest, under Jiraiya and Mu Yue, moved quickly toward the pre-arranged rendezvous. Interrogating White Zetsu was tempting, but time was short. They had no spies in the Iwa force, and no clear idea what Iwagakure would do next. March right away, wait until daybreak, or stay put. The only sensible plan was to prepare everything and be ready to respond. If they reached the meeting point first, they could at least link up with the support unit as planned. Mu Yue had already sent the support unit ahead to set traps. Even if the ambush failed, the combined forces could still operate. With Mu Yue's ability to sense malice, further infiltration was unlikely. In short, they could defend the border and meet Konoha's expectations. Under a fast march, the support unit and the Konoha Grass Country unit converged. Mu Yue still sensed no Iwagakure within his perception range. He and Jiraiya inspected the traps and refined the ambush plan. Ambushing a shinobi unit is rarely easy unless the plan is exceptional or the enemy lacks a sensor. Their plan wasn't genius, it simply exploited an intelligence gap. But Konoha had another advantage: top-tier sensory ninjas. Sensory ability varies with rank. Mu Yue, Minato, and Hyuga Hizashi were all exceptional. The regular units withdrew beyond the reach of ordinary sensory ninjas and hid. Mu Yue and the others spread out to form a sensory net. As dawn broke, they detected the Iwa force approaching. Minato teleported to Hyuga Hizashi's side with the Flying Thunder God technique and ordered him to safety. Mu Yue left a shadow clone disguised as a stone in the forest at the resting point to gather intel. A clone can't sustain a transformation jutsu, but it can hold a non-chakra-consuming disguise. When Mu Yue's clone perceived the Iwa force relaxing, it dispelled itself and its memories flowed back to Mu Yue. He acted at once. He ordered the unit to attack and led some Jonin forward while Minato took Jiraiya and his team. Both used the Flying Thunder God technique to teleport into the resting point and, at the same time, detonated the pre-placed explosive tag traps. The whole area erupted, over and over, plunging the Iwagakure force into chaos. The ambushers became the ambushed. Soldiers were being blown apart without seeing a single opponent. Minato threw 10 Flying Thunder God kunai in all directions. Each kunai blinked yellow as it struck a target, killing Iwa Shinobi instantly. Jiraiya didn't summon his toads. He formed hand signs and unleashed a torrent of flame, fire release, fire dragon flame bullet against the Iwa soldiers pressing forward. The unit was still mustering. Summoning huge toads would have been risky. Fukasaku was also too early, so Jiraiya relied on his own ninjutsu. Mu Yue chose similarly. He unleashed a massive high-damage fire technique, fire release, great fire annihilation, and a crimson sea of fire swept outward, far broader and fiercer than Jiraiya's attack. Some Iwa shinobi tried to counter with water, but Mu Yue's controlled great fire annihilation was beyond ordinary defense. Their streams evaporated. Those caught by the inferno turned to ash. Jiraiya considered the flames, then dismissed surprise. The technique itself was not unknown. Its power and form were Uchiha level, and if Mu Yue wanted such a fire jutsu, he could likely obtain it. Still, it was devastating on the field. Roshi reacted and formed signs, unleashing a massive water release, great waterfall technique. With his tailed beast chakra augmenting him, Roshi's water assault blunted Mu Yue's fire enough to save many of his comrades. He grumbled about the traps and the wasted march, reminding himself how at the War Council they had mocked Konoha and Hayate Mugetsu while marching sleepless through the night. Now, stunned by the explosive tags, they had been lucky Roshi could bring water to bear. Iwakura barked orders, drawing some Rock Ninja Blast Squad members near him. A Jinchuriki had special status, one like Roshi, capable of near-full tailed beast transformation, was even more valuable. Iwakura, watching the battlefield, saw most of the chaos was trap-driven. The actual Konoha attackers were fewer than 10. If they didn't disperse, their own ninjutsu would be less effective, and they risked hitting their allies. They still had nearly 2,000 shinobi there. Numbers favored Iwagakure, but fatigue and the traps had already cost them. The thought of Konoha's support unit joining was worrying. Better a tactical retreat than annihilation. "We've fallen into Konoha's trap. Retreat!" Iwakura shouted. He had intended to hold a while to save face, but the risk of losing many active forces made retreat the wiser choice. Face could be regained, soldiers could not. "Minato, transfer me to the fleeing direction," Jiraiya said. They couldn't let the Iwa force escape. Minato understood, grabbed Jiraiya's shoulder, and teleported them toward the Iwa retreat. They'd prepared for this. Mu Yue and Minato had buried many Flying Thunder God kunai around the area. Jiraiya then performed the summoning technique. White smoke and 2 enormous toads crashed into the Iwa formation. "The intensity of recent battles is a bit high," Gamabunta complained, seeing thousands of Iwa shinobi. Gamaken raised his shield as several attackers immediately targeted the summons. Jiraiya looked embarrassed but had no alternative. Large bodies would draw blows, but they also blocked the way. The Iwa answer came in mass. Earth release, rock iron cannon technique. Thousands of cannon-like stones hurled toward the great toads. Water release, Tepudama. Gamabunta spat out a sage art water blast and shattered the projectiles he touched, but there were too many. Even with his tough hide and chakra defenses, he took damage. Gamaken's shield helped, but it didn't cover everything. He too was injured. 2 massive toads facing 1,000 attackers was a tall order. "Those persistent toads," Roshi muttered. There were too many Iwa shinobi. He couldn't risk a full-tailed beast transformation in such cramped conditions. A single jump would crush friend and foe alike. "Roshi, you take the shield toad. I'll handle the other one. Let's finish them quickly," he ordered, condensing lava release chakra. Even enraged, he wasn't reckless. Retreat was their priority, and the faster the better. Who knew what other traps the intelligence had? Was Konoha's support unit really only 1,000 strong? Could there be more hidden? Roshi nodded and unleashed his condensed-tailed beast chakra. Dark red chakra wrapped his body. He prepared the single, devastating punch he trusted most, the one that could knock Gamaken out. He lunged forward, lava surging, but a sudden, sharp sense of danger made him stop mid-charge. A water spear erupted from the ground, piercing the earth in front of him. "It's you again," Roshi growled when he saw the ninja who had launched the water spear. He wasn't unfamiliar with Mu Yue. Mu Yue had first earned a small reputation on the grass country battlefield. Even though more than 2 years had passed, Roshi still remembered him. Aside from Mu Yue's steadily rising fame, Roshi's memory was burned by Mu Yue's water release back then. Mu Yue didn't have many techniques, and his chakra reserves were low, but his water release nature transformation was already at master level with over 7,500 proficiency. That high proficiency, together with water release's natural advantage over fire, once stopped Roshi's melting style from expressing its true destructive power. "Then I'll deal with you first," Roshi snapped. Clad in burning lava armor, he charged at Mu Yue without hesitation. "Disperse!" Roshi barked at the Iwagakure shinobi around him as he ran. There's no such thing as immunity to friendly fire in the real world. If one of the Iwa shinobi accidentally touched his melting-style armor, they'd at best lose skin, at worst die. Except for the jonin assigned to protect him, the rest of the Iwagakure ninja blasted away with chakra and leapt back, using ninjutsu to keep Jiraiya and the two toads occupied. Melting style, scorching stream rock technique. Roshi spat giant, flame-wreathed spheres of lava as he ran. Earth release, rock iron cannon technique. The jonin shielding Roshi fired stone cannonballs at Mu Yue. Mu Yue watched the charging Roshi, switched his breathing to water breathing, and entered water breathing chakra mode. With perfect level fire release nature transformation plus techniques like flame breathing and blue flame, he could have taken Roshi down with fire, but that would cost more chakra. There were nearly 2,000 enemies here. To be safe, he chose the most chakra-efficient defense. Water release, water shockwave. Mu Yue sealed the hand sign and a torrent of chakra transformed into water release. In an instant, a massive current of water sprang up around him, spinning and rising into a rotating vortex 10 meters across that enveloped him. Roshi's lava spheres hit the vortex and hissed as their flames were smothered by the moisture-laden wind. On contact, they were extinguished and flung away. The earth release cannon shots smacked into what felt like an impenetrable wall and failed to break the water defense. Such powerful water release. Didn't our intel say Mu Yue was good at fire release? The jonin protecting Roshi said in surprise. From the perspective of nature transformation, earth counters water, yet their combined earth release couldn't break Mu Yue's water barrier. As Mu Yue maintained his output, the vortex grew, quickly swelling to 15 meters in diameter and stretching over 40 meters long. "This isn't small at all, it's huge," Jiraiya said, eyes on the enormous water formation. Besides using his own ninjutsu to blockade the Iwa force and protect the two toads, he kept an eye on Mu Yue. Although tackling the Four Tails Jinchuriki had been Mu Yue's request, Jiraiya felt responsible as a senior to step in if anything went wrong. But he guessed Mu Yue would be fine. With water release at this level, Roshi's melting style had no chance. Roshi's unease deepened. What's he doing? Making a big show with a defensive water release? He tried to push through the barrier with melting style, and the Iwagakure ninja kept attacking Mu Yue with everything they had, but their techniques bounced harmlessly off the water vortex. Even with Jiraiya and Minato Namikaze helping to block, the Iwagakure numbers were overwhelming. Gamabunta pummeled, could no longer hold on, and retreated to Mount Myoboku badly wounded. Iwakura let out a short breath and condensed explosion-release chakra to bombard the resisting Gamaken. "Iwakura-sama, a large number of chakra signatures are appearing around us," one of Iwakura's sensory ninja reported, voice taut. First explosive tags, then large-scale ninjutsu, then giant nin beasts. The signals added up. High-speed shinobi wu, to be on their way from beyond the sensory range. Iwakura's face darkened. Then a roar split the air. "Water release, 10,000 water dragon blast," Mu Yue roared. Using water-breathing chakra's versatility, Mu Yue performed a secondary change on the vortex. The spinning, rising water halted. The mass of water he'd condensed surged outward like a wall of ocean waves dozens of meters high, and then those waves reshaped into long, ferocious water dragons, 10 massive serpents of water, each carved from the element by his control. The sight stunned the nearby Iwagakure shinobi, and even the Konoha reinforcements rushing in from all directions. It should be Mu Yue sensei's ninjutsu, right? That's intense. Let's hurry. Obito quickened his pace. In his mind, Jiraiya handled fire release, Minato had Flying Thunder God and Rasengan. No one else among their reinforcements could produce such a huge water release except Mu Yue. The others surged forward with renewed speed. Intercepting 1,000-strong force meant enduring crushing pressure every second. Who gave him that nickname? Couldn't they pick a better one? Roshi's face darkened. If he'd known Mu Yue's water release was this strong, he would have swapped opponents with Han. Han's boil release wouldn't be countered like this. But there was no time for regrets. 4 of Mu Yue's water dragons were converging on him from different directions. Roshi expelled chakra and dodged with everything he had. The Jonin protecting him tried to raise earth defenses. Earth release, earth flow wall. Several Iwagakure Jonin performed the technique, throwing up walls around Roshi. Jinchuriki are devastating, yes, but they're often one-dimensional. If confronted by a counter and without accurate intel, they can be taken down. That's why villages assign escorts to their Jinchuriki. These escorts aren't as powerful, but they cover the Jinchuriki's weaknesses and prevent sudden defeat. Normally, skilled Iwagakure Jonin cooperating would make a water release like this blockable, but they hadn't counted on Mu Yue. What was Mu Yue now? Perfect level water release nature transformation, perfect level water breathing, and a repertoire of high-proficiency water release ninjutsu. Even if Senju Tobirama were restored at his peak, in terms of water release alone, he might not match Mu Yue. The earth walls collapsed with a roar under the water dragon's blows. Multi-directional impacts forced Roshi down. The ground cracked beneath the pressure. The remaining 6 water dragons struck the other Iwagakure forces, keeping them busy and unable to free Roshi. A giant water dragon slammed into Roshi. His lava armor went out with a hiss of white steam. He gritted his teeth, pouring chakra into trying to sustain it, but the second and third dragons followed. The force pinned him down, and the fourth struck with such impact that his melting-style chakra collapsed entirely. Not a single ember flickered on his body. The lava shield was breached, and a small pool of water formed where he lay. Why bother? The Four Tails inside Roshi sighed, watching. The Four Tails' relationship with Roshi was complicated. Unlike many tailed beasts, it acknowledged Roshi, but Roshi refused to acknowledge it, refusing even to utter its name. Mu Yue's 10 giant water dragons had not only broken Roshi's melting style, they'd wreaked havoc on the surrounding Iwagakure forces. For a moment, the battlefield fell quiet beneath the onslaught. Mu Yue-sensei, Minato-sensei, we're here, Obito shouted as large numbers of Konoha shinobi poured in from all directions. Damn, we were a little slow, Iwakura muttered, realizing they'd missed the best moment to break through. Was all of this part of your plan? Iwakura ground his teeth, glancing first at Mu Yue and then at Jiraiya. Mu Yue's choice of meeting place was almost cruelly perfect. The ground was flat, easy to attack, hard to defend, and a river ran nearby, letting Mu Yue use water release to suppress Roshi, the Four Tails Jinchuriki who wielded boil release. Iwagakure now had nowhere to form a proper defense. One of their strongest weapons, the Jinchuriki, had already been neutralized, and this was only the beginning. You did well, Jiraiya said as the Konoha forces arrived. He canceled his summoning technique and sent the injured Gamaken back to Mount Myoboku. His delaying tactics had worked. Now it was time to take advantage. Fire release, great fireball technique. Lightning release, false darkness. Water release, raging stream blast. Without needing orders, the arriving Konoha shinobi unleashed a barrage of ninjutsu and tools against the Iwagakure force. Roaring fireballs, stabbing spears of lightning, ferocious water dragons. A cascade of different techniques slammed into the enemy line. Earth release, earth flow wall. Some Iwagakure shinobi responded, defending or counterattacking as they could. Just as Jiraiya said, I can't let Mu Yue pull too far ahead. Minato Namikaze quietly produced a Flying Thunder God kunai from his pouch. He couldn't directly overpower a Jinchuriki like Mu Yue, who relied on refined ninjutsu and chakra nature suppression, but his efficiency at killing ordinary shinobi was unmatched. He had been holding back earlier to keep an eye on Jiraiya, preventing him from being surrounded, and then to protect the summoned toads when Gamabunta and Gamaken came. Before the Konoha force arrived, Minato had been fighting in support, so he'd kept a low profile. Now, however, he moved. Whoosh! Using a pre-placed Fuinjutsu tag, Minato blinked beside an Iwagakure shinobi. By the time the man realized Minato had teleported, the black kunai was already through his heart. Swish! Another Iwagakure ninja drew his sword and slashed. Minato had already felt his killing intent, calmly drew a kunai and tossed it upward. The slash sliced through empty air as Minato disappeared and reappeared above, seizing the thrown kunai and driving it down into the swordsman's chest. Minato's strength was not only the Flying Thunder God's instantaneous movement, but also his superhuman reaction speed. He could coordinate attacks on the move and detect threats in time to counterattack at impossible speed. After dispatching the second enemy, Minato didn't hesitate. He activated Flying Thunder God again and vanished to another point. Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique. This time he didn't need a Killblade. He threw a shuriken, formed seals, and used a ninjutsu. He'd deliberately chosen a section where the chakra signatures were weaker, mostly lower-ranked shinobi. Under Minato's chakra, the single shuriken multiplied. 1 became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 8. In moments, a rain of shuriken descended, cutting down more than a dozen Iwagakure ninja who hadn't had time to react. Even if some chuunin or genin tried to dodge or block, the density made escape unlikely. Thump, thump, blood bloomed. Iwagakure soldiers fell. Many of them remembered the terror of the yellow flash. Minato rarely used ninjutsu aside from Flying Thunder God and Rasengan, and didn't often put on flashy displays like Mu Yue or Jiraiya. Still, more than a few feared him more than Jiraiya. Jiraiya dealt more often with Jinchuriki, and wasn't known for slaughtering ordinary shinobi. Minato, on the other hand, was a true executioner. Jonin to Genin fell like vegetables to his efficiency. If you couldn't withstand a Rasengan, he might finish you in an instant. Ordinary enemies he could kill with a single kunai thrust. Summoning Technique. Jiraiya slammed his hand to the ground as Han charged, having failed to land a solid attack on Gamaken. If it were just one Jinchuriki, Jiraiya wouldn't back down. Han was only semi-transformed now. Even if he went full tail, Ed Beast, Jiraiya was confident he could handle him one-on-one, aside from the tailed beast ball, for which he had no good counter. White smoke flashed as Fukasaku and Shima appeared. Another Jinchuriki, huh? At least it's only one, and the other one isn't in great shape, Fukasaku observed, grateful, if oddly so, that there was only a single-tailed beast to face. What terrible timing. I was just about to prepare breakfast, Shima complained, but she and Fukasaku moved with practiced speed and hopped onto Jiraiya's shoulders. Facing a Jinchuriki capable of full transformation required Sage Mode. Sage Chakra not only amplified ninjutsu, it vitalized the body, boosting defense and recovery. Fukasaku, Shima, sorry about the trouble. Jiraiya took in natural energy, flitted aside with body flicker technique to evade Han's strike, and apologized. Boom! Han's thick, red chakra-wreathed arm slammed down where Jiraiya had been, shattering the earth into a crater. Now that the Konoha force has arrived and Mu Yue can handle the four tails, I can widen the battlefield a bit, Jiraiya thought. A Jinchuriki surrounded by comrades was less likely to go all out, dangerous for allies, and many of Jiraiya's long-range techniques could accidentally harm his own side. Shinobi forces rarely fought as two clean lines trading blows. Combat devolved into close-quarters scrambles where long-range jutsu could be disastrous. Jonin were the ones who usually mastered long, mid, and close-range techniques. Chuunin and Genin typically had only a few decent jutsu. With Jonin in the minority, close-quarters combat was inevitable, and large-scale ninjutsu risked burying friends. Jiraiya widened the distance and lured Han away. Han understood the tactic but refused to retreat. His plan was clear. Though the Iwagakure force suffered from traps and positioning, they still had numbers. Kill Jiraiya and the Konoha force might lose their cohesion. Perhaps Iwagakure could turn the tide. Several Iwagakure Jonin tasked with protecting Han stuck close to prevent any slip-ups. Sage Mode. When Jiraiya had absorbed enough natural energy, he fused it with his chakra to form Sage Chakra. His nose took on a slightly toad-like angle, and the sage markings appeared on his face. Mount Miyobaku's Sage Mode was complete. Boil Release, Unrivaled Impact. Han erupted with tailed beast chakra, using boil release to bolster his physical might. Nature transformations and even bloodline limits could develop differently. Mei Terumi turned boil release into corrosive mist, while the Five Tails boil release amplified physical strength by heating chakra to boiling point. Jiraiya, now honed by sage senses, didn't want to clash head-on with the raging Han, so he continued to dodge nimbly. Then, with the battlefield safely widened, he counterattacked. Sage Art Fire Release, Great Flame Bullet. Jiraiya leaped and transformed concentrated Sage Chakra into a massive, surging fire projectile. Earth Release, Earth Flow Wall. And Iwagakure Jonin tried to raise a defensive barrier to shield Han, but how could something so minor stop a Sage Mode Jiraiya's full fire technique? The flames tore through the earth wall like it was paper. Han closed his eyes, but he wasn't waiting to die. With no fear of friendly fire, he drew deeper on the tailed beast's power. Dark red chakra erupted, and a terrifying aura enveloped him. The chakra thickened, coalesced, and soon the dark red energy formed a solid, enormous beast. A gigantic white-tailed beast materialized on the field, bigger than the giant toad Jiraiya had summoned earlier. Han's full-tailed beast transformation drew every eye. As the superweapons of the five great nations, tailed beasts carried immense intimidation. Even standing there, they radiated an oppressive, battle-shaping force. Although the Jinchuriki had fully transformed into his tailed beast and radiated a fearsome presence, Roshi and Jiraiya had already moved off the main battlefield, so the transformation didn't immediately change the overall situation. The Iwagakure and Konoha Shinobi continued to fight as before. Mu Yue wanted to press his advantage, but when many Iwagakure Shinobi saw Roshi wounded, they swarmed to stop Mu Yue from finishing him. Most of the Iwa Shinobi disliked Roshi. He was a Jinchuriki with a volatile temper, but on the battlefield, they needed his strength. When the Iwagakure force was first formed, Onoki hadn't placed other top Iwa experts because two Jinchuriki were already present. If Mu Yue killed Roshi outright, the Iwakure contingent would be in serious trouble. Earth Release Rock Iron Cannon. Earth Release Rock Pillar Spear. Earth-style jutsu rained down on Mu Yue. Calmly, Mu Yue took 3 Flying Thunder God kunai from his pouch and tossed 2 of them. Earth Release, Earth Flow Wall. Some Iwagakure shinobi quickly raised an Earth Flow Wall to block the kunai and keep them away from the range of Earth ninjutsu. Mu Yue activated Flying Thunder God technique, vanishing and reappearing beside several Iwa shinobi. He and Minato had prepared thoroughly. Flying Thunder God seals were planted at many points. The 2 thrown kunai were distractions. Slash. Blood sprayed as Mu Yue's kunai cut through throats, killing several of the Iwagakure nin. The rest watched with narrowed eyes and silent disgust at Flying Thunder God technique. Being able to teleport with a kunai was infuriating enough. Now they had been baited into a trap and had no idea where he might reappear. Cough, cough. Roshi coughed twice, gathering chakra to stand on a small pond. He breathed hard, trying to steady himself with tailed beast chakra. The pain was acute. Only 4 of Mu Yue's 10 dragon bites had hit him, but they had done heavy damage. His lava armor, strong enough to endure Minato's Rasengan, was no match for water dragons. Water is a nature counter to lava. Only the first water dragon had been slightly blunted. The next 3 struck him directly. Had he not activated tailed beast chakra in time to mitigate some force, he'd be in much worse shape. Hayate Mugetsu. Roshi stared at Mu Yue's flickering figure in the crowd, face hard. After intense training to master the full tailed beast transformation, he had never suffered such a setback from one opponent. If the nearby Iwa shinobi hadn't helped, Mu Yue might already have finished him. Use full-tailed beast transformation, make Hayate Mugetsu think you're going all out, and I'll lead a squad to finish him off. Iwakura had silently materialized beside Roshi and spoke low. He wanted to retreat, but a clean withdrawal would fail. They had to eliminate key Konoha figures, Jiraiya or Hayate Mugetsu. Even Minato's position was too marginal to matter here. Full-tailed beast transformation. Here? Roshi frowned. They were in the center of the Iwa force. He had used melting-style chakra mode specifically because he worried about being in such a position. Most shinobi will have time to fall back. A few incidental casualties are a necessary sacrifice for victory, Iwakura said quickly. This was the best plan he had. Even if Roshi lured Mu Yue to Lord Fifth's side, it wouldn't help. Jiraiya was difficult to handle too, and a wounded Roshi alongside the Lord Fifth might still fail against Mu Yue and Jiraiya together. But here, a four-tails and full-tailed beast transformation, backed by Iwakura's 5 Jonin from the Rock Ninja Blast Squad and the many Iwa Shinobi around them, made killing Mu Yue plausible. Roshi hesitated. He'd long endured criticism and discrimination as a Jinchuriki. He instinctively resisted Iwakura's calculus. If we don't kill Hayate Mugetsu to create an opening, even more people will die, Iwakura pushed. If Roshi agreed, Iwakura wouldn't have to shoulder all the blame. Onoki was already displeased with Roshi. If Iwakura reported that Roshi had recklessly used full-tailed beast transformation to sacrifice Iwa lives for victory, blame might be spread. You'd better actually be able to kill Hayate Mugetsu, Roshi said with a sigh, closing his eyes slightly. Iwakura's heart leapt. He put on a grave face. Of course, I'll do my utmost. Dark red chakra surged from Roshi, enveloping him. A rising brutal aura birthed another huge beast at the battlefield's center. Minato, watching, blinked at the sight of the red-haired giant ape. If Roshi punched Mu Yue from this position, Mu Yue might die, but several Iwa Shinobi probably would too. Mu Yue's Byakugan, with its unobstructed 360-degree view, detected something. After Roshi's transformation, several chakra-rich shinobi were converging on him. Although the Byakugan saw through their chakra signatures, Mu Yue still used an appraisal technique to be safe. The panels flickered up. Name, Iwakura Chakra, 71,000 skills. Explosion Release, Mastery 3,115,000. Earth Release Chakra Nature Transformation, Mastery 3,500. Explosion Release, Meteorite Blast, Mastery. Explosion Release, Explosive Flying Stones, Mastery. Name, Sasame Chakra, 41,000. Skills, Explosion Release, Mastery. Earth Release Chakra Nature Transformation, Explosion Release, Exploding Stone, Mastery. Name, Tsuchikoku Chakra, 35,000 skills. Explosion Release, Mastery. Earth Release Chakra Nature Transformation, Mastery. Earth Release Hardening Technique, Mastery. Seeing that all the panels showed Explosion Release, Mu Yue realized the 6 approaching were the Rock Ninja Blast Squad, Iwagakure's elite explosive unit. He didn't panic. Now that he knew their plan, the danger lessened. He had Flying Thunder God to withdraw at will, and Armed Color Haki to protect his body perfectly. As Roshi transformed, the nearby Iwa Shinobi, afraid of being caught in collateral damage, fell back quickly. Mu Yue followed faster, cutting down Iwa Shinobi as he moved toward denser clusters, trying to provoke Roshi into accidentally harming more of his allies. Roshi had committed. He leapt and swung a giant fist at Mu Yue. In full-tailed beast form, simple chakra-augmented taijutsu hits with devastating force. Boom. Roshi smashed a crater into the ground. 2 unlucky Iwa Shinobi lie crushed inside it. Mu Yue used body flicker at the last moment to create distance and rushed toward the small pond he'd made, where most of the explosion-release Jonin were gathered. Iwakura allowed himself a small smile. An opponent who could use Flying Thunder God technique was normally a poor choice for encirclement, but Iwakura had predicted Mu Yue's mindset. He didn't think Mu Yue would shy away from a wounded, transformed Jinchuriki. Mu Yue was a genius and a killer of a Jinchuriki. Iwakura believed Mu Yue's pride would make him press the attack. Explosion Release, Explosive Flying Stones. Iwakura launched a volley of rock projectiles far more powerful than explosive tags. At his signal, the other 5 Explosion Release Jonin unleashed their best explosive jutsu too: Exploding Stone, Explosion Technique, and more. Iwakura didn't relax. Mu Yue could simply use Flying Thunder God to escape. He began condensing chakra to unleash his meteorite blast, intending to detonate it the moment Mu Yue reappeared nearby. If he personally killed Mu Yue, defeat could be turned into glory. Instead of fleeing with Flying Thunder God, Mu Yue activated a jutsu. Ice Release, Ice Age. An enormous eruption of chakra exploded from Mu Yue. A terrifying ice-blue cold radiated outward from him. Crack! Crack! Boom! The small pond froze into an ice field in an instant. The explosive stones were encased and shattered into ice shards that hit the ground and detonated in frozen bursts. The cold advanced with shocking speed. Iwakura hadn't expected Ice Release. Before he could react, the freezing air crawled over him, and his body was encased in a single block of ice. The other explosion-release jonin who had been too close froze as well. Roshi had intended to land that punch, but the cold strew K him before his fists swung, his pupils constricted, and then he was an enormous ice sculpture. Under Mu Yue's full expenditure of chakra, the S-rank Ice Age manifested its terrifying power. Aside from the explosion-release jonin and Roshi, who were closest, many other Iwagakure shinobi nearby were overtaken by the cold and turned into ice blocks one after another. Those who hadn't been caught stared at the towering ice statue, dozens of meters tall, with horror and fell back. Even Konoha shinobi who had been nearby broke off to retreat. For a time, a silent, ice-blue zone spread across the battlefield. As expected of Sensei Mu Yue, Obito cried, watching Mu Yue resolve the crisis and counterattack so decisively. His students and the Konoha team had just slaughtered many Iwakure shinobi and were moving to support Mu Yue, but Mu Yue had handled it himself before they could help. It seems it won't be this time, Kakashi breathed. Their plan to bait and destroy the Iwa force had mostly succeeded. Mu Yue and the Konoha contingent were intact. Next, they only needed to further weaken Iwagakure's fighting strength, Konoha's biggest victory yet in the war. Pay more attention to our surroundings, Shisui warned, his Sharingan sweeping the area. Mu Yue was fine. Now the others had to keep themselves safe and avoid becoming a burden. Jiraiya, locked in battle with the Lord Fifth, watched the frozen four-tails and was impressed. Mu Yue had hidden his cultivation of ice release until now, and it was astonishingly advanced. The dawn light hit the ice and reflected in many colors. Against the four-tails' red fur, it was dazzling. If it's him, he might even surpass Sarutobi-sensei's teachings, Jiraiya thought, moved. Mu Yue had shown water release and fire release well beyond ordinary ranks, and now a bloodline limit, ice release, honed to a frightening degree. At 21, Mu Yue had a boundless future. Lord Fifth, who had noticed the main battlefield, felt uncharacteristic anxiety that made his attacks uneven. But Jiraiya in Sage mode pressed an opening. Not only had the Lord Fifth been injured, several Iwagakure jonin assigned to protect him had been killed by Jiraiya and the two great sages. With those distractions dealt with, the fight gets a lot easier, Jiraiya said. A Jinchuriki capable of full-tailed beast transformation is never to be underestimated. Paired with a specialized jonin squad, the threat multiplies. But for a powerful shinobi like Jiraiya, facing a single Jinchuriki, while not effortless, offered a very good chance of victory. The frozen four-tails and the frozen Iwagakure jonin bolstered Konoha morale, but for Iwagakure, the blow was severe. Their strongest fighters were pinned and failing to gain ground. In that situation, winning against Konoha seemed impossible, and even breaking through looked difficult. Crack! Iwakure's chakra, concentrated deep in his body, finally took effect and helped him break free of the thick ice. He gasped for breath, face pale and trembling. Although he had shattered his prison, the cold had invaded him. If anyone looked closely, they would see his hands and feet still shaking uncontrollably. Drip. The ice around Roshi began to melt more quickly, steam rising in thick white plumes as his body radiated terrifying heat. Mu Yue wasn't surprised. The four-tails chakra carried scorch release, and high temperature was enough to undo Glacier Age. Glacier Age might be a powerful technique drawn from an S-rank scroll, but Mu Yue's ice release proficiency and lack of a breathing technique to boost it meant he hadn't deployed the same enhanced layers he used with other skills. Glacier Age could kill ordinary jonin and below instantly, but against hardened opponents like Roshi and Iwakura, it was unlikely to deliver an instant kill. At best, it would gravely wound them. Roshi's eyes were wide with fury. "Iwakura, you idiot!" He glared at the vice-captain as the cold and his recent injuries left him worse for wear. More than anything, he was furious that Iwakura, who had insisted he would lead the squad to take down Mu Yue, had failed so spectacularly. Blood boiled under Roshi's frustration. He spat a lava fireball in Iwakura's direction, aiming at the enemy charging toward him. Mu Yue stopped and used body flicker to escape in a different direction. He refused to waste himself trying to save Iwakura. This man was finished and not worth exhausting his own condition over. Iwakura sighed. In a matter of hours, he had fallen from the bright hope he'd been at the end of the meeting to a man facing death after a failed encirclement. He wished, selfishly, that he had been the one injured that day so he could be recovering in Iwagakure, but that option had passed. The Iwa force was now on the verge of disaster. Whether he would live was uncertain. At least we won't be wiped out completely, he told himself. Even as he thought about blame and how to clear his name later, Iwakura's loyalty to his village dominated his mind. He had vowed to protect Iwagakure since childhood. Use the tailed beast ball. Don't hesitate. Full power. Then take the surviving Iwagakure ninja and retreat, he barked. It was a desperate, extreme order. A tailed beast ball had enormous range and destructive power. If Roshi released it, Konoha would have no choice but to pull back or perish with Iwagakure. Roshi stared at him in disbelief. Iwakura was reckless, even under the influence of the tailed beast chakra. Releasing a tailed beast ball here would make him responsible for countless deaths across both sides. Before Roshi could respond, Iwakura began condensing chakra. Unleashing a tailed beast ball would take time, and Mu Yue's current distance from Roshi made it possible for him to stop it. 5 stone projectiles, laced with explosion-release chakra, shot at Mu Yue. But protected by Byakugan and Transparent World, Mu Yue simply ignored the attacks, flickering aside and evading each flying rock. While dodging, he drew several kunai from his pouch, 3 aimed at Iwakura and 1 at Roshi. Roshi felt the chill of fear as chakra gathered in front of his mouth, condensing into a dark purple ball, the early stage of a tailed beast ball. If Iwakura's plan succeeded, it would be catastrophic to everyone nearby. The stalemate could turn into mutual annihilation, him and Iwakura dying and the rest of Iwa's force trapped. "Kakashi!" someone hissed as he saw Roshi's intent. Kakashi's jaw tightened. Stopping Roshi was urgent, but the Konoha force was stretched. Iwagakure still outnumbered them by 800, and without the ambush, Konoha could suffer terrible losses in a direct fight. The Iwagakure ninja further back were equally bewildered. If Roshi released a tailed beast ball here, it would take them and the Konoha side with it. People instinctively began to put distance between themselves and Roshi, hoping to escape. Iwakura had 1 card left. In a frantic attempt to force a 1-for-1 exchange, he detonated himself. An explosion-release self-detonation. Ordinary shinobi would never expect it. Not every explosion-release user could or would do such a thing. Explosion-release, self-detonation. A blinding white light surged outward as Iwakura's body erupted. He'd calculated that at such close range, Mu Yue wouldn't have time to use Flying Thunder God and might be caught by surprise. But Mu Yue's body vanished. A moment later, he appeared beside Roshi and struck. An exploding fist slammed into Roshi with a heavy impact, knocking him off balance. The barely formed tailed beast ball collapsed and dispersed. From his vantage, Iwakura watched in bafflement for a single stunned instant. Mu Yue had read his intention. But then the explosion hit. Boom! A cataclysmic blast and a flash of white light left only a massive charred crater where Iwakura had stood. He was gone. Nobody had expected Mu Yue to be reading intent, or to have Byakugan under his glasses, seeing chakra signatures so clearly. Mu Yue had anticipated Iwakura's plan from the start. That was why he threw 3 kunai at Iwakura and a Flying Thunder God kunai at Roshi, to force Iwakura's self-detonation while simultaneously interrupting Roshi's tailed beast ball. Kakashi's tense muscles loosened a fraction. If Roshi had actually released the tailed beast ball, even with Mu Yue's protection, the Konoha force would have taken severe casualties. Iwakura-sama! Some Iwa shinobi watched the smoking crater in stunned silence. They had not expected their vice-captain to sacrifice himself. Roshi himself felt a strange tug at his chest, looking at the scorched ground. He'd thought Iwakura incompetent. He'd led them into a trap, but he had died to carve a path for the Iwa force to retreat. Even a man he'd judged so harshly had fought to the death for the village. Roshi's thoughts turned inward, to the dark corner of his heart, where he had always refused the 4 tails. Like many Jinchuriki traumatized in childhood, Roshi had been shunned and feared. He resented the beast sealed inside him and had avoided communicating with it. He believed that without the 4 tails his life would have been different. He hated being a Jinchuriki. But watching Iwakura's self-sacrifice cracked something inside him. If such a man could give his life for the village, could he not do the same to gain the power to save them? Roshi's mind slipped into the inner consciousness, a dark space where the tall, red-haired four-tails ape stood before him. The beast regarded him in silence. Roshi forced the words out, voice trembling with urgency. This was the first time he dared to call the four-tails by name. "Son, please, help me. Give me a little more power." The four-tails' expression changed subtly, almost to amusement. The stubborn human had finally broken his stubbornness. Without protest, the beast poured a surge of chakra into Roshi's body. Roshi barely had time to whisper a single, exhausted "thank you" before his consciousness slid back into the chaos of the battlefield, changed, and now armed with a new determination. 580. End in surprise. When Roshi opened his eyes again, he could clearly feel a steady surge of power through his body. It was still the four-tails chakra, but there was something different about it. Roshi didn't have time to probe the change. He was on a battlefield, and a powerful enemy was waiting for him. His chakra has increased. Mu Yue, keeping his Byakugan active, watched Roshi with quiet surprise. There were only 9 Jinchuriki in the ninja world. Mu Yue had faced 3 of them and killed 1, so he had some sense of how they behaved. Even Jinchuriki, who fully transformed into their tailed beasts, couldn't usually tap into every scrap of their beast's chakra. At their peaks, Roshi and Han typically had around 5 million chakra. Mu Yue, however, had appraised a rampaging 3-tails once on the East Bank battlefield and clocked it at an astonishing 18 million. The discrepancy stuck in his mind. The 3-tails' performance in the original reports had been middling, nothing to suggest it should be so far above the 4-tails. Comparing the circumstances, Mu Yue reached a conclusion. The 3-tails had been rampaging in full control of its body, not the Jinchuriki. Han and Roshi might look like full-tailed beasts when they transformed, but the human inside still controlled them. Mu Yue suspected the crucial factor was the relationship between host and beast. If a Jinchuriki reached the kind of mutual understanding Naruto later achieved with the 9-tails, perhaps they could access the beast's full chakra. "Is this some kind of butterfly effect I caused?" Mu Yue murmured, throwing an appraisal at Roshi. In the original timeline, Roshi had never formed a bond with the 4-tails. His name had only been called once when he was reanimated by Edo Tensei. Chakra, 6,120. Roshi's chakra had already passed 6 million and was still climbing. Mu Yue didn't panic. This wasn't a game where a level up healed everything. Roshi might have more chakra, but he was badly wounded. Mu Yue didn't need elaborate tactics. The ninjutsu he'd already used would be enough. Besides, the Jonin who had been assigned to protect Roshi had been neutralized by Mu Yue earlier. Without those carefully chosen assistants, Roshi's newfound power might not matter. Lava release, Flower Fruit Mountain. Roshi burst out of the consciousness space and immediately poured his fresh chakra into ninjutsu. Flower Fruit Mountain was a high-level lava release technique he could only perform by spending massive amounts of 4-tails chakra. Roshi knew lava release, but his own chakra and skill level were insufficient to cast this without the 4-tails power. The 4-tails chakra contained molten energy, letting him do lava release on a scale he otherwise couldn't. He slammed his hands into the ground and funneled lava chakra through the earth. The soil liquefied into rivers of lava that spread rapidly. The small lake Mu Yue had made earlier turned into a lava pit. Most of the Iwagakure shinobi nearby had already been killed by Mu Yue, so Roshi didn't hesitate to use such a destructive technique. Mu Yue tried to fight back with water release to halt the lava, but soon gave up. This place was only near the river, not on it, and trading water release for lava release would be a losing proposition. Roshi had the 4-tails to draw on like a power bank. Under Roshi's control, the churning lava surged toward Mu Yue, who dodged with practiced ease. Roshi wasn't discouraged. If Mu Yue were easy to hurt, he never would have been injured earlier. If Flower Fruit Mountain didn't succeed, at least it might create an opening for a tailed beast ball. Roshi opened wide and gathered tailed beast chakra. A black-purple orb coalesced before his mouth, more quickly than ever. Whether that was the 4-tails aid or something else, he wasn't sure. "Do you think you've won? Don't celebrate yet," Roshi bellowed as the sphere swelled, preparing for indiscriminate bombardment. Mu Yue used the Flying Thunder God technique to blink ins, intently to his disciple's side. clearing the remaining Iwagakure shinobi from around them. "Don't get bogged down. Pull back some distance," he ordered. If Roshi launched a desperate volley, Mu Yue preferred to retreat. With the Iwa commander dead and many elite jonin killed, the Iwa force was already crippled. It wasn't worth sacrificing the roughly 1,000 Konoha shinobi left to finish them off. Konoha didn't have a surplus of manpower. Too many losses would send academy graduates straight to the front. Minato Namikaze thought the same. If Roshi planned a suicidal onslaught, they should draw back and let Iwagakure pay the price for their commander's death. If Roshi was bluffing, a short withdrawal would still let them capture many Iwagakure survivors. When the tailed beast ball finished forming, Roshi hesitated for a heartbeat, 0.1 second, then spat it toward the nearest shinobi. Mu Yue's mastery of Flying Thunder God made him a difficult target. Since Roshi couldn't kill him, it didn't matter whom he aimed at. Konoha and Iwa shinobi alike watched the black-purple orb approach, its aura terrifying. Everyone wished they had 2 more legs to escape faster. Jinchuriki are lunatics, throwing tailed beast balls like this, one Iwagakure shinobi thought miserably. Boom! The ball hit the ground and erupted in blinding white light. The explosion swallowed anyone who hadn't fled beyond its range. In that instant, there was no distinction between Iwagakure and Konoha. Under a tailed beast ball, all were paper. The shockwave rang the ears of those who had dodged, and everyone realized Roshi meant business. Roshi immediately formed another tailed beast ball. With orders from Mu Yue and Minato, the Konoha shinobi ran without hesitation. If their commanders had told them to break and pull back, why die alongside the Iwa troops? Boom! The second ball detonated nearby, creating another devastating blast. Roshi then condensed a third, this time aiming for Jiraiya, who was fighting Han. Han's full-tailed beast form, originally pure white, was now streaked with scorch marks and battered. A Jinchuriki could withstand a tailed beast ball better than a normal shinobi, so Roshi didn't expect to kill him. He just wanted to force him out of transformation. Minato teleported Jiraiya away before the ball struck. Boom! The explosion slammed into Han, knocking him out of his full transformation and reverting him to human form. He collapsed, exhausted. "So you were holding on all this time," Roshi snarled, leaping to Han's side and grabbing him as he gathered another tailed beast ball. Han should not have been so fragile. Clearly he was badly injured. After the fourth detonation, what had been a beautiful forest was a blasted wasteland. There were no more Konoha or Iwagakure shinobi fighting on the field. "That Four-Tails Jinchuriki is insane. He's probably killed hundreds of Iwa shinobi with those balls," Jiraiya muttered, staring at the distant white light. Roshi's first ball had been the deadliest. It likely killed nearly 200 Iwagakure soldiers. Mu Yue had given the retreat order early, so Konoha's losses were smaller. Only dozens died in the first blast. Even if he breaks through with some Iwa survivors, he won't have it easy afterward, Minato said. Killing a fellow villager and then resisting arrest could brand a ninja a rogue. Roshi had slaughtered hundreds of his own people in plain sight. Minato could only imagine the repercussions. If Iwagakure executes him and chooses a new Jinchuriki, that would be ideal for Konoha. It takes a long time for a new Four-Tails host to become a top fighter, Mimurabi Ketsu said, nodding. One's position shaped one's perspective. The tragic story of a hero turned criminal might be awful, but as long as it happened to an enemy, there was relief in the result. "We don't need to tangle with Iwa politics now. This is a huge victory," Jiraiya said, trying to lift spirits. Although they hadn't annihilated the enemy, winning a battle like this, 1-100 versus 2,000, and inflicting such heavy losses while losing relatively few of their own was a success worthy of record in Konoha's books. Iwagakure had lost its commander and numerous elite jonin. Their middle and lower ranks were decimated. Aside from failing to kill the Jinchuriki, the battle was a clear defeat for Iwa. "Mu Yue, you write the summary report. You were commander and the biggest contributor," Jiraiya said, clapping Mu Yue on the shoulder. Mu Yue's plan had turned a disadvantaged force into the victor. His battlefield performance had been crucial. Mu Yue pushed up his glasses. Jiraiya was probably just eager to avoid the paperwork, but Mu Yue agreed. Writing wasn't difficult. He could delegate it to a shadow clone and be done. Iwa suffered heavy losses. Maybe now they'll recognize their limits, someone said. Lord Mu Yue is amazing. He turned the tide as soon as he arrived, another added. Many Konoha shinobi relaxed and began cleaning up the field. But Mu Yue's Byakugan remained alert. This was not an ordinary war. To others, it might have seemed larger but similar to past conflicts. Mu Yue, who knew White Zetsu's true identity, suspected darker hands were at work. Uchiha Madara and Black Zetsu had been involved in this campaign. Madara had even used White Zetsu as an Iwa spy. Mu Yue didn't believe Madara had come simply to help Iwagakure from the goodness of his heart. To guard against Madara's interference, Mu Yue had prepared. He had modified his Yang Seal to restore chakra more effectively, switching it to a water-breathing chakra mode. When facing the Four Tails, Mu Yue had been drawing from the Yang Seal rather than from his own reserves, so he'd preserved chakra to handle any additional threats. Unexpected enemies did not appear. Minato and Jiraiya led Mu Yue toward the place where White Zetsu was imprisoned, intending to interrogate him. White Zetsu didn't look human, but he could communicate, so interrogation was the logical next step. When they reached the cell, something strange met them. Minato hurried forward, his expression hard. Two Konoha shinobi who had been guarding White Zetsu lay unconscious on the ground, and the 3 White Zetsu that had been sealed there were gone.